I whittled my account down to $258. And I still have that statement. My grandmother was dying. I got in my father-in-law's car and I drove down to Danville. How am I going to tell my wife that I'm going to have to clerk again? I'm a failed trader.
Welcome, everybody, to the Warrior Podcast. I've been trying to get my next guest on here for over a year. It took a bunch of us to coax him in. He's a former floor trader. I knew him back in the trading floor days. He has a trading system. He does his stuff on X. PAX Trading is his company. He has a very unique angle in with teaching traders how to trade, and it starts up here. It's not about points and figures. He is happily married to Jen, mother of 5 great kids. He's a strong believer in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to share some laughs and tears. And with that said, welcome, Matt Kenah, my dear friend.
Thank you, Frankie. I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, awesome.
And I'm sorry it took so long to get here.
I just want to tell everybody how we met. We were both clerks at the same time on the trading floor. Mm-hmm. I think you were working for Mendez, was it?
Yeah, I was working for Steve in the front month. And I think you had just come in with Ronnie, didn't you?
Yeah. So you were more seasoned than me, and you were working for what later would be the enemy. I would call them the enemy, one of the crime families down there. I always got along with Steve, though. I like to go back to the beginning, as far back as we can with your childhood. Mm-hmm. Now, I know you live in Beverly right now. Does that mean you're a South Sider then?
Yes, I was born and raised on the South Side. Irish. My dad was Irish. My mother was Croatian. So, and I look like my mother. She was tall and beautiful, and not that I'm beautiful, but tall and gorgeous. My dad was, shorter and, just Irish looking. I was born in Little Company and Mary Hospital, as most of us were, and went to Queenie University Grammar School in 71st and Hamlin. And then we moved from the Market Park neighborhood, which was, the storied Market Park neighborhood from, the Illinois Nazi days, and, the incredibly, the tumult of growing up on the South Side in the 70s, what that was like when the city was beginning to kind of integrate. It was an interesting time to be alive. But a lot of that stuff we weren't aware of. Our parents kind of, would take us down to Central Illinois, where my mother's parents had lived, to escape when there was another demonstration in the park or when there was something else going on in the park. But anyway,
so the demonstrations back then would be what, like racism type things?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like in the Blues Brothers. Remember the movie The Blues Brothers?
Of course.
So in that movie, that scene, where the Nazis were marching, that was kind of a regular occurrence in the 70s. That stuff went on. And I think that was based on the park, Market Park. But each block growing up there was a great place to grow up. It was mostly Polish and Lithuanian, but there was some Irish and some Italians that were mixed in there. City workers, a lot like Beverly is now, like where my brother lives in Morgan Park and other places. But it was just people working at Nabisco, and in those days, you can still have one parent working someplace and to be able to buy a home, 2 cars, put their kids through Catholic school and things like that. So it really was a close-knit community, and the park was undergoing, the South Side was undergoing, some racial change, and that brought about a lot of stress, in the different neighborhoods, and a lot of really, really, really bad behavior by a lot of people, but you also saw a lot of good. It prepared me for the Merc, I think, in many ways.
Oh, yeah, I bet. So I noticed with the Southsiders on the trading floor that you're very loyal to your area, right?
Yeah.
Like the Mulcrones were Southsiders and the Arundels. They never leave almost, it seems like.
No,
so
right, yeah.
Very loyal to the neighborhood.
Yes. But, they're like Beverly changed, it changed, but it integrated a little bit. And Beverly stayed, where the Mulcrones are from, and, the Arundels and Furlongs and those guys. That neighborhood stayed. So those guys were able to stay there. Market Park had changed, and it changed quick. So we moved further south. We moved from 71st and Pulaski basically to 93rd and Pulaski. And we thought we were like the Beverly Hillbillies. We went from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house to a 3-bedroom, bath and a half house with a little bit of a yard. That was great. But that was like a really Irish neighborhood. The hometown, we finished grammar school at Arley Loretto, which is in the hometown Oak Lawn, kind of right on the border. So like 87th and or 88th and Costner, you know, in that area. And that was a really, really great place to finish grammar school.
So how many siblings?
I'm the oldest of 3 boys left.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. We had a really, really, really fun childhood. We had aunts and uncles and cousins that were all around our age. You know, really big family, both on the Croatian side and the Irish side. So we had brothers and sisters that were very, very, very. We had cousins that were very, very close to us. We had older brothers and sisters that were, or older brother and sister that were very close to us, that were, you know, half siblings, and you know, we just had a really, really, really great way of living. It was. Our home was always full. You know, my mother was an Italian, but she looked Italian and she cooked Italian food, and everybody was over at our house constantly.
That's really cool.
It was great. Mass every Sunday. We were very faithful Catholics.
We're going to touch on it. What year were you born in?
1968.
Wow. Your maturity and wisdom seems like you would be much older, but
Oh my God, I think 68 seems like the old days.
really? Well, I was 64, and we were lucky to live in that era and live in a community, a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's just a different thing. Kids don't have that now.
No, they don't.
They're all
They don't.
entrenched in their, you know, they get all this electronic stuff in their face. So what did your dad do for a living? What were your mom's interests?
My father sold insurance. He hustled a lot when we were young.
What does that mean?
You know, he worked hard. He
gotcha.
did okay, and then he had a couple of good years, and then kind of coasted. And then he would sell whatever wasn't nailed down. My uncle owned a trucking company, so they did all kinds of crazy shit. Like when my grandfather came here, he sold dirt by the bushel. He was a dirt peddler. So in 1980, my dad had this old Italian guy, Jimmy Vegetable.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, just like that. Who owed him? Oh, somebody always owed him something. You know, it was like from these workman's comp scams that they were
Gotcha.
running, or he did some insurance adjusting that may have been a little bit kinky. You know, so anyway, somebody always owed him something, and this guy Jimmy Vegetable gave him a 1954 GMC dump truck. It was a dump truck. And we would fill it up with dirt on the weekends. We come out here, you know, out to Lamont or Orland when they were building it out here, and we'd fill up that truck with a load of dirt, and we would go peddle it around the neighborhood. My brother Pat, who's now a Chicago police sergeant, would be on. He was a little guy. He'd be on top of the dirt pile yelling, you know, we got the dirt, $1.50 a bushel. We sold dirt.
And what did people buy the dirt for?
For their gardens. You know, we go around like Canaryville or Bridgeport or, you know, West Lawn. You know, other older neighborhoods, and these old ethnic people would be out there, you know, gardening, and we'd have the dirt for them.
Now, were you just, because sometimes their sign says free dirt, or were you guys like pilfering the dirt?
Oh no, you had to pay for it. We bought it. We would buy it from Beams. I don't know how I remember all of this, but Beamster Bore was the name of the company that we would buy it from. And it would come off. They would pulverize it, and it would come off the back of a conveyor belt, hit the truck, load us up, and take off. And we go around selling that. But you know, I laugh about it because it's. I think it was a very formative experience for me. Was learning how to work like that. And we were, you know, this is maybe 1980, so I'm 12. You know, 11, 10, 12 years old. So we did that on the weekends. My father would also sell 100-pound drums of laundry detergent that he called J-Bonds. He would say, put an ad in the paper and say, come on, we got to go sell some J-Bonds. I don't want to sell J-Bonds, Dad. But I learned how to work by doing those sorts of things. My uncle owned a small trucking company, his brother, in the back of the yards neighborhood. So I'd be there on the weekends sweeping up, you know, doing things like that. So I've been working since I can remember. When I was 16 years old, my uncle had a 9-wheel dump truck laying around that he wasn't using. So we painted it Kelly green, my brothers and I. I just got my driver's license, painted it Kelly green, put shamrocks on the side of it, and called it Whitey's Garden Supply after my grandfather. And we did the same thing. We started our own we sold gravel. We sold, you know, loads of gravel, loads of sand. We would, when we didn't have anything to do on the weekends, we would go peddle dirt around the old neighborhoods.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what about your mother? My stay-at-home mom doing her thing?
Yeah, she was a stay-at-home mother until we got a little older. I think when I was at De La Salle High School, when I was at D, she started to do nails. She went to beauty school to learn how to do nails. And she did that. She developed like a following, a very loyal following of people that were mostly cancer patients. My mother had 4 different kinds of major cancer. She had cervical cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, and ovarian cancer eventually killed her.
Wow.
So she shared her story, and she was honest about her life. She was honest about her story. And because of that, somebody was newly diagnosed with something, they were told to go see Donna, go talk to Donna. So she would do their nails, and she would become their confidant, or kind of,
That's kind of cool. That's an interesting correlation with, enhancing their beauty, but then coaching them a little bit too, right? Hey, everybody, I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors. My dear friend Andy Thompson is the owner and operator of Talent Studios. Talent Studios makes custom knives. This is one of the first knives. He made it for me. It's extremely sharp. Everything is made by hand. The handles, the grips, everything. They're beautiful, durable knives. We like to say knives for life. Whether you're a collector or you want knives for utility and function, he even makes the casings for the knives by hand too. Andy works with his son AJ. They are super fine craftsmen, and every knife they put everything, all their heart and soul into their knives. So that's Talent Studios. I will put a link in the description of each of the podcasts, and you'll see their information at the end.
The way she saw it was her ministry, Frank. It was her way to kind of give faith, hope, and love to people who were struggling, or to share her experience, strength, and hope with people who may have been suffering from a lack of it. Not necessarily a person suffering from the physical malady, but somebody suffering from a lack of faith, hope, and love. And that's how she lived her life.
So I was going to ask you, what are some of the most valuable things you learned from your parents? And I could already say
those 2 things.
Your father's work ethic, right? Always hustling. Then your mother with her benevolent heart and stuff like that. That's really cool. I have a copy of my book for you here, and I have a chapter called Leadership. And I talk about how parenting is one of the most important leadership roles. And what makes a good parent, right? Is it the millions of decisions we make on behalf of our children? And then I thought through that, and I'm like, I've seen parents who they're very hands-on, and they make a lot of good, rational decisions, and the kids don't make it through childhood. And shitty parents where the kid turns out okay, like me. So what is it? What makes a good parent? And I came up with 2 things. One is your children need to know that you love them unconditionally, even when you're sticking your boot up their ass. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you have to live your life in such a way that you want your children to live their life, because they're watching you right out of the womb.
Yes.
Your behavior and your actions are actually grooming their behavior, right? So your dad gave you the work grunt, and your mother gave you some other stuff too. I have to ask, because I'm a foodie, so what were some of the things your mom made regularly that you guys ate?
She could make anything. My mother could make anything, and somebody would give her a recipe of something, and then she would follow the recipe, and then the recipe was out the window. She'd make it to taste. She learned how to cook from my Aunt Patsy, my dad's sister, a redheaded Irish lady, ended up marrying my Uncle Gaetano, who I was very close to, Gaetano Matola. And my Uncle Guy looked like Rocky Marciano. My Aunt Patsy looked like a Southside version of Maureen O'Hara.
Okay, gotcha.
They were the oddest looking couple, but they were great. And my Uncle Guy's mother was from Bari. So we were very close. We were all very close. So we called her Grandma Minnie, even though she wasn't our grandma, Domenica Matola. So Grandma Minnie had taught my mother how to cook when they were newly married. My mother grew up, she grew up kind of hard. She had, the only memory of her father was at his funeral. And so she didn't know him. And then my grandmother got remarried to a man from old railroader from a town called Danville, Illinois. And he was a binge drinker. So he'd work, in those days you can work, railroad guys can work, and then you can turn down the work. So he'd be off in Chicago, or he'd be in Tennessee someplace, and, start drinking and then not go home. There'd be no coal in the house, no heat, no food. All of these younger brothers and sisters that she had, that ended up living with us to some degree or another, so they really had a difficult time in life. And my mother was very pretty, but didn't realize it. She was very smart, but didn't know it. Didn't graduate high school, yet she was the smartest woman I knew.
Wow.
And when she married my father, my dad was, he went to Loyola University on the GI Bill after he had served in the Army. He was, kind of a knockaround guy around the city. He was, in her mind, he was, like a debonair kind of a city guy,
Worldly, right?
Right. Worldly. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. But, so they kind of saved each other, in a way. And my mother really she was always the best dressed woman in our neighborhood. She was always the prettiest, and in those days, if you had your teeth were bad, you had them pulled, and her teeth were bad. So she had them pulled and she had, dentures in and when she got her teeth fixed, I mean, I know this seems like the old day, like an old day story, but when she got her teeth fixed, she became more confident, and just she put one foot in front of the other and became more confident, more sure of herself, and found her way into the world, into the Chicago world of my dad's, the downtown kind of jazz world of my dad. My dad loved all kinds of music, from jazz to Irish music to the Great American Songbook. Hated Elvis Presley, hated rock and roll, didn't like the Beatles. But loved that kind of music. And, they were a really great couple. And it was fun to be part of, on the outside as a little kid, on the outside looking in. Because, I knew my parents loved each other. I knew that they adored one another. I knew that they liked being together. And because of that, we all wanted to be there too. As we got older, we still went to my mom's house for Sunday dinner until the day she died. Even after she died at 63. She was 63 years old when she passed. And even after that, we would still go to my dad's house and we would take turns cooking until our kids got, too busy and we, start missing things. And then we just started, then it became catch as catch can for Sunday dinner. But we did Sunday dinner every Sunday of our lives. And, whatever person in the neighborhood that was struggling and their family would be there, they would be there. My mother always set tables for people, that didn't have as much as we had, not even if we didn't have much, if my father wasn't making any money and we were eating hot dogs and eggs, on Sunday, she would somehow find something to put together for a group of people. There was a family in hometown that my father had a way of collecting people, not CEOs of companies, just people that were struggling, Irish guys that were all Irish guys and Italian guys. That's all he hung with, and Jews. So he hung around with nothing but Jewish guys, Italian guys, and Irish guys. And they all liked to drink. So, they were always in some sort of distress to one degree or another. And there was a family from my neighborhood that he was very good friends with. And this man would be over at our house all the time. He had 4 or 5 kids, I think. They were the wife was from Northern Ireland, and the mother, and he was from Chicago, of a very well-known, prominent Irish political family too. Anyway, they struggling. Thanksgiving, no food. So my mother made a full Thanksgiving meal, left it in the oven, set the table like the Pope was coming to our house, and that whole family came and sat at our table, ate our food, and and we went to my aunt's house. Came home and, everything was put away. I'll never forget that. Everything was put away. The dishes were clean, and I remember thinking,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. That's how they were. That's how both my parents were. If my father had $50 in his pocket and he knew you needed it, he'd give you 100. He'd go into debt to help somebody. He would give his shirt off his back to his detriment. He would give his shirt off his back. And those are qualities that I know that we have all tried carrying forward as we found success to one degree or another.
Yeah, that's amazing. We evolve and we lose a lot of our traditions, but it's a very ethnic thing for all ethnicities born in our era, where that Sunday was for family gathering. Yeah. And it was every single Sunday. We had the same thing. Ours started a little bit earlier. We would have an earlier dinner, like 2:00, and then we would play penny poker at night. My grandpa would grab a coffee can of pennies, and we'd all grab a handful like we were playing penny poker. And so in my family, like my immediate family, me and Dorothy, we never did that. But we did host all the family functions. And when she died, I wanted to bring the the pasta sundae back.
I love that you do that. Yeah. I love those pictures. I love when you post those pictures. I think they're just beautiful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I only do it once a month, but like your parents did, I invite friends and family, but I might meet somebody at the gym and we start talking and they're having a hard time. I'm like, hey, why don't you come to Pasta Sunday? Right. And it really, it's magical because you're putting a bunch of people together who have very good energy and they're good souls. I don't have to do anything. I put the food out. It goes on autopilot. Even when new people come, I do have a little trick because I have some friends that they really love to hear people's stories. One of my friends, Dawn, I think she's like 70. If somebody new walks in the door, I'll go, Dawn, that's Gus and Irene. They live across the street. They've never been here. I go light them up. And she'll go right to them and she'll get the life story within 5 minutes.
Frank, that is as believers and as Christians, that is exactly what we are all meant to do. And I got to see that from my parents. You got to see that from your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, and everybody around you that enveloped you after having a difficult childhood. And I just so beautiful. We build community wherever we go, and that's what we're meant to do. If I'm in Starbucks and I turn around and I start talking to the woman behind me, that person is my best friend for those 5 minutes. She's the only person in the world that matters to me. And, I've had some beautiful conversations as a result. I sat and I cried with a woman, older black woman at Mariano's a month or two ago who lost her son to violence on the streets. We sat and talked for an hour. I sat and just talked in Mariano's in the milk section, in the dairy section. And we both sat there and cried. We prayed together. We talked. And it was beautiful. Rob Crescione, calls me America's friend. Wherever you go.
I love Rob. I haven't seen you in years. I love that guy.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, he's a good soul.
He's great. Guy. He is a great, he is. I talk to him every day. I talk to him every day.
And he's funny as hell too, man, from what I remember of him.
Oh, yeah, he is.
So that's a superpower, what we can call whatever, God-given, where you can just befriend somebody on the street and boom, you're getting deep into life.
Especially now. Everybody looks at each other with side eye. Marty Walsh and I talk all the time too, as I know you guys do. And we're ready for whatever happens, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever comes down the road, I'm ready. I'm prepared for it. I've got what I need, and my family is well protected. But in everyday life, until that shit sort of pops off in everyday life, none of that stuff matters. Everyone's looking at each other side-eyed, and everybody's looking at each other askance, and everybody's each other's enemy. So if we're building community wherever we go, then maybe we can be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I stopped making political posts on Facebook and on Twitter a long time ago because I want to be part of the solution. I'm ready for whatever situations arise in the future, but I want to be part of the I've always wanted to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
So being part of the solution, you have to determine what that is, right, and then what is the method to get there, right? So I too had an evolution. I don't even watch the news anymore. I see the news because it comes up in all my feeds, but I don't watch it. I avoid it. And the reason is because I was taking part of the news as truth, right? They divide us by saying left and right, liberal, conservative, whatever. And, I would watch both sides of the news, and I linked up with one side, which would be the more conservative side of the news, like Fox News. And then I started seeing the bias there too. Mm-hmm. And then I started realizing I am also operating from bias. And so I was using the information I was getting from Fox News and like Newsmax to try and have reasonable discussions with people about the politics. And I realized that people are so entrenched in their politics and picking their side, right, that it's groupthink. And if you're a real logical, critical thinker, I call myself a critical thinker wannabe because it's a process, not a destination, you don't make any progress with these people. It just becomes agitation. So when we're talking about being part of the solution, that isn't it. Mm-mm. Talking about politics, that is not it.
Do you remember Donnie Phillips?
Of course.
So I talked to Donnie a lot too. Donnie and I had a great conversation on Saturday. Donnie comes from like a, politically he's going to come from like a more old school kind of a liberal point of view. And I'll come from an old school kind of a more conservative point of view. But when we have these political discussions, we almost always agree on most things. We'll come at it from different points of view. But once you kind of logically and rationally kind of think through a situation and you talk about it with somebody who is also logical and rational, we are always going to find more things than we agree on than things that we don't. And so those divisions become less, and become less meaningful. They might still exist. I'm pro-life. Maybe he's not. Maybe I don't know what his position is, but I'm just using that as an example, but we can both agree that the right thing needs to be done in certain situations, and we can move on through that, right? And I think that was just a great example of it, because it was a conversation that we ended up talking for an hour and a half on Saturday, and we talk regularly, but we ended up having this long conversation Saturday night in the cold. It's great to be able to build that kind of community and find that kind of cohesiveness, or that sense of community, and that really building community wherever I go is something that's very, very important to me. It's something that was important to my mother, and even it was important to my dad too. And it's something that I want to be able to carry forward. I couldn't be more grateful for every situation, every experience that I've had in my life. From being as wealthy as I was at a young age, to driving Uber in 2014 in Chicago, and so terrified that I'd run into one of the traders that I backed, or so terrified that I'd run into one of my ex-clerks, or one of the traders that I knew that when I was a big Nasdaq trader. I never did, thank God, but I don't regret any of that, because all of those experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, has brought me to where I am now. I'm 57 years old. I have health issues, maybe that the 28 years in this business can cause, but I'm healthy. I take care of myself. I eat healthy foods. I don't drink much. My kids, are all smart. We all think our kids are brilliant, and they're all beautiful, and they are. But more importantly, they're good moral people, and they like being with me. They love being with my wife and I, and I love that. That's what life's about, because then that means that I'm doing something right. They like being with me. I'm doing something right. That means that maybe they will continue to build community wherever they go. And then the world will truly or my life will truly have meaning. And the people who are in my trading group, or the people that I talk with on Twitter, or, I get message after message after message on a constant basis from people. I pray the rosary every day. It's something that's very important to me, and I do it on Twitter. I started to put out a Spaces link, and 80 people will be in there, and eventually throughout the day, 200, 300, 400 people will pray the rosary with me.
I love this. So we're going way far ahead to the present.
Sorry.
So we're going to
drag me back.
Yeah. So all right. So you went to Catholic grammar school. Beautifully outlined the whole neighborhood thing and the family togetherness. When you got to high school, did you have any interest in sports? What kind of student are you, going through high school?
I was a terrible student. I went to De La Salle High School, and De La Salle is not St. Ignatius. Ignatius were the smart kids. De La Salle were, tough kind of a neighborhood kid. I graduated De La Salle with a 1.9 grade point average.
Come on.
Oh yeah. No good. My father, I don't remember my dad ever asking me if I, did you bring home your books? Did you do your homework? What are your grades? He wanted to know if we were working, what are you doing today? You working? So sports was always very important to us. We played baseball. I played football at De La Salle. We boxed, and we played baseball. I didn't play baseball at D, but I did play football, and I worked real hard to be a good football player. We my junior year, we won the Prep Bowl championship, and that was still kind of when the Prep Bowl had a little bit of cachet,
What was your position? Did you like to play?
A defensive line.
And I got to ask you this. Did you ever get cracks from your mom or dad?
Oh, yeah, all the time. My mother never cracked us around, but the old man did.
Yeah.
Not often, but when we deserved it, which was quite often. I mean, we were rambunctious boys fighting each other, and, my brother Donnie and I are only a year apart. We're Irish twins.
Yeah, the modern parent, they look at that, they're like horrified about that. Yeah. And I'm like, I call them well-placed shots.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a father, but I had plenty of father figures, and those well-placed shots you never forget.
Yeah,
it tunes you up pretty good.
It does. And it makes it, there's consequences for our actions, so you have to be aware of that.
Yeah. So now through high school, you're not a good student. You're doing sports
and working,
and you're still hustling the hustles on the side with the truck, or did you get a real job anywhere?
No, I've never had I don't think I've ever really had a real job. So 16 years old, I learned how to drive I was always hanging around my uncle's trucking company, and I was very close to my Uncle Art. So I learned how to drive a truck before I can drive a car. And then he had this, I just got my license, and he said, why don't you guys go and start your own landscaping business like you did with your dad? So we did. And that was my first foray into managing a business. My biggest client, that it was this, we did it for 2 summers. My biggest job was De La Salle had torn down the old buildings, which were built in 1889. And they had contracted us to fill in, that area where they tore the old building down with river rock. So we're driving down. Our first load, I didn't realize that there was a gap. The truck was a 1969 International. It was a 13-speed. So I didn't realize there was a gap in the back on the tailgate. So river rock is coming out.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, bouncing off of cars.
Oh no.
Driving down 57, and I'm 16 years old. I got this big truck with my brothers next to me and some of our friends and people trying to pull me over. I was scared. I had no idea what the hell was going on. We're driving down 57 to the Dan Ryan, and then the Dan Ryan to De La Salle at 35th Street. People were calling my uncle's garage. That the phone number of my uncle's garage was on there. Oh my God, it was unbelievable. If I came in 15 minutes late, my uncle would read me the riot act. And he, I was terrified of him. My dad would too. If if they told me to do something in the garage, like sweep that up or clean it up, and if I didn't do that, they would, they were tough. I have no idea how much money my uncle and my dad had to shell out to fix windshields, and they never said anything. Well, 17 years old, I started to drive tractor trailers. You had to have a D license then. This is pre-CDL. And it was 18. But my uncle figured, well, it's the city. He bribed everybody. I'll be okay. So I got in 2 accidents my first week. 2 accidents. And I'm thinking he's going to kill me. This man is going to kill me. Didn't say a word. That's what I pay insurance for, kid. Don't do it again. But if I'd have left a shoe, if I'd have left a work boot in the middle of the thing, he would have screamed at me.
That's so interesting. That's a good perspective, actually.
They were both like that. They're both like that.
Yeah, nice. So you finished high school, and then what happened after that? Did you go to college or no?
No, I was driving a truck for my uncle. I went to. Did I go to college? I went to Elmhurst College and I played football, and then I hurt my knee. I didn't go to class. I was living there, just not going to class. I was driving a truck for my uncle, and a certified letter came home that he owed me and said, that I'd been thrown out of school. And I had told him. He went nuts. You can't drive a truck for your uncle the rest of your life. How are you going to survive? I was maybe making $30,000 or $40,000 a year. This is in 1987.
A really good coin then.
Yeah, it was. But you can't raise a family on that. He would tell me. You got to make at least $50,000. There was a guy from Bridgeport that went to De La Salle High School that was kind of like a hero to us. A guy named Pat Finley. He changed his name to Pat Geronda, and he was one of the biggest donors to De La Salle, and he was in his 20s. He was a seaboat trader. So I wanted to do what that guy did. So my best friend, my oldest friend and my best friend, Frank Bologna. Do you remember Frank? Bridgeport kid. Worked in the...
Sounds really familiar.
Worked in the back month Euros and spreaders. A quiet guy.
Did he have a badge or no?
No.
Okay.
His brother, Paulie Bologna. Remember Paulie?
Paulie just passed away, didn't he?
Yeah. Frankie was a phone clerk for Rosenthal at the Board of Trade. So Frankie and I were running around someplace one night, and I told him, and he said, well, I'll get you a job as a runner. So in lieu of college, I became a runner at the Merc, making $89 a week, minimum wage.
For Rosenthal?
For Rosenthal, yeah.
Which quadrant, the meats?
No, I ran the lumber and the back month Euros. And this is in late 87, early 88.
And the back months were kind of still new.
Yes,
right?
Very new. Yeah.
So I was probably a phone clerk when you came in. There used to be front month, second month, and T-bills. And then the back month started, and then they moved the T-bills further away. Was that right?
Yeah, as I recall too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way it was set was the desk was, back underneath, like, under a catwalk, it was like in a little dark area. And then lumber was here, right? And then maybe 30 feet on a diagonal was the back month euros. And then the bills were behind that. And I didn't run very much to like the front month. It was just in the back months. So that's what I did. But I got, John Fisher, JOF, who I still talk to. I talked to him on Facebook. I guess I talked to him.
He wasn't 001. He didn't become the first option guy, was there? Because we had a guy named Fisher. I don't remember if that was him. But
no.
Anyway.
John and his brother Jimmy and a guy named Steve Lev and Mike Nardi. They had a deck in the lumber pit that I would run orders to. And John needed a clerk. John needed a clerk during rollover. So he said, listen, it's only, I'll pay $150 a week. You only have to work a week. So,
which is almost double what you were getting paid, right?
Double what I was getting paid. I was like, yeah, okay. But you only have to work two weeks a month. Only have to work rollover. I was like, I'm in, dude. So I was driving a truck for my uncle and working for these guys just a couple of weeks during rollover in the lumber. And John Fisher told me, John Fisher was the very first person to tell me that, you're good at this. You have kind of you naturally understand the way that this works. You're very good at this. You're going to do okay. I'll never forget that. I mean, I was a nervous kid just trying to, put together the deck and hold the deck and learn how that goes. But I paid attention to what was going on in the pit. And, I kind of instinctively knew I had to give him the upside, or, once I knew how to work the stops in the deck, what stops to give him, or, the downside. I'll tell you, the lumber pit was the best kept secret on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Those guys did very, very well. And it was a pit full of incredible Chicago characters. You had old guys like Stu Gimble and Mr. O'Connell. I can't remember his last name. They would be sitting in chairs in the pit like this, pretending to be napping. They were always pretending to be napping. And then a runner would come up with an order and one eye would open. And if I would give that order to John or Steve to fill, those guys popped right up out of their slumber.
That's so funny, because I remember running orders into the lumber pit, and it was like a brick of gold was coming in the pit. Everybody perked up, and they all were trying to get a look at the order. It was hilarious. Yeah. But I remember it being a very small pit and not many guys in there, right?
No, it was very small.
Did you ever know a guy named Harry Temple?
Yes, yeah.
Harry Temple did out trades, but he was in the lumber pit too later on. Right? So he was a good guy, liked him.
Johnny Tenorelli was in there, Joey Ayupa, two gentlemen, just great guys.
Frickin' Italians everywhere, you know what I mean?
Everywhere. Can't get away from you guys.
All right, so take me through the progression now. Now you're doing rollover with the deck and stuff.
Yeah, and I did that for a little while, and then I took Bruce's. Remember, it was Bruce and Rami arbitrage class. It was
Bruce. Lamont and Rami when I did it, but Bruce was in and out. So yeah,
so it was Bruce and Rami when I did it. Yeah, yes.
I used to call him Juice. Love that guy.
I loved him, man. Yeah. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Bruce. That class was that arbitrage class was great. I mean, I knew that. Whatever was going down there, when the first day I walked onto the floor, Eugene, I think his name was Eugene Reeves. His badge was huge. He ran the, I don't know if he ran the operation for Rosenthal, but he was the guy that got me my badge and my jacket.
I vaguely remember him too. Yeah.
I remember walking on the floor thinking, I don't know what in the hell is going on down here, but whatever this is, I want to be a part of it. And, and so I really paid attention, and I worked really hard to learn, and I wanted to stand out. So when Joff, his badge was JOF, when John Fisher told me I was good at this, man, I really wanted to be good at this. So, asking questions, always talking to somebody. Well, you want to be like one of those guys. They make $1,000 a week. They make $500 to $1,000 a week. Those clerks, those arbitrage clerks. So well, what do I got to do? I took Bruce's class and I learned just a simple arbitrage. And somebody told me that Russell Steger, do you remember Russell with the big bushy stash? Mm-hmm. He needed a clerk.
Yeah, he looked like a wacky professor almost. He was real quiet. He walked around.
Oh yeah,
he was real low key. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah,
great guy. Just a wonderful man. His son Noah later on ended up filling orders with him. So I met Russ. He needed a clerk, $350 a week. I'm in. Do you have experience?
So you're like almost, that's double. Now you're doubled again, right? Doubled from 89 to 150 to now, right? That's awesome.
Ready to go. Ready to go. So Russ asked me if I had any experience, and I don't know, must have bullshitted him into it. Oh yeah, I got up, So my first day was, I don't remember her last name, Annie. She had a little desk near Delshire in the back months. John McGuire and like Billy Kavanaugh.
She wasn't the Annie from Bear Stearns either, right? She was. She
was an older woman, and she looked kind of like a nun.
Yes, but she was a super nice lady.
Oh no, she was fucking mean.
Oh no, then it wasn't the Annie I was thinking of.
She was very, very nice after this particular experience. So I got up on that was Russell's only customer, and she did big size.
Okay.
So she's up there, and it was all spreads. I can do, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I could do that, 10, 20. I knew that shit, and I practiced at home. I did everything I was supposed to do, and she's like, D-Smarch. I don't. I'm sorry. What? So, and she's trying to put in thousand lots with me. It's D-Smarch. I don't know where's. So I had no idea what to do, and I was lost, and I froze up. Billy Kavanaugh and John McGuire stood up. They were clerks with the Euro spreaders. So they stood up and they quoted her the market. They took the orders. They gave them to Russell. Russell filled them.
Wow, that's righteous.
So stand up, man. And then they took the time to teach me. They took the time to teach me what a spread was, how to quote it. They took the time to teach me how to get the quote from the pit. D-Smarch, and they taught me how to deal with the Annie. And then after I got good at it, then Annie became one of the nicest people around. When I got my seat and I started trading years later, she was always so happy to see me. So she became my biggest fan. But man, the agita, she called him, calls in my life, was just terrible at that point. But I knew that if I wanted to be there, I had to survive that shit, and I had to learn, and I did. I paid attention. I asked a lot of questions, and I wasn't. I was very self-confident. Otherwise, I would have cowered like a kid during this period. But I was not too proud. I wasn't too egotistical to constantly look for, ask for help or ask questions or learn. I was self-confident, but I wanted to be the best and I wanted to learn. So I asked. I had the privilege to learn from Billy and from Johnny Mac, and they were great guys.
I always loved both of those guys, and I was running orders to Old Man McGuire when I was in the meets.
He always scared me.
He'd always my vision of him is always running away with because he was legging the spreads. He'd have to zip to one option to the other. So now you're doing that.
Yeah, working for Russell, and I got pretty good at it. And then Ojo and Menini needed a clerk for David Chris Daly. I had dinner.
One of my dearest friends to this day.
Just had dinner with them.
Did you really?
Yeah, not long ago. Him and Stanley Estasio, or Michael Cochran.
Yeah.
Can't call him Stanley anymore. He's
another awesome realtor.
Oh, God.
Great
guy. Just a great guy. When his daughter passed, I didn't know about it until after, and I felt so bad. So I reached out to him. We ended up having dinner all together. I mean, I can't stand when I find out that somebody's passed too late, and I wasn't able to be there just to show my face. Not that, if I don't have anything to say that can change anything. Like when Dorothy died, what am I going to say? Except to reach out to you after I saw the video and say, God, Frankie, that was beautiful. And thank you for that.
Yeah. And we can't help when we find out, but I had words with him too, with Michael Cochran. Brutal. Losing a child, I can't even imagine that. So
me either. And God bless him. And, just pick up your cross and carry it. And he's doing that. And God bless him.
Yeah.
So Chris Daly needed a clerk. I met with Ojo and that was an interesting experience. $500 a week. Or maybe it was $750.
So you're doubling again, right?
Yeah, maybe it was $750, and I was, now I'm rich. Yeah, now I don't have to work for my uncle anymore. This is great, but I still love driving trucks. It was just piggyback. So I'm driving, like old Armado Max, picking up trailers from rail yard to rail yard. So it was easy work, and I liked doing it. I loved being in the trucks, and I loved the old World War II. Drivers that were driving for him, and these old ethnic dudes, these old Italian guys, and this guy Moon Mancini, John Corbett. These people were shit that you would only see in a movie. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and now I'm working for these guys, and that was fun. It was I learned a lot from them. Chris Daly is a phenomenal broker. David Kelly, and a great guy. David Kelly was, Dave just got a seat and was just, and he was very good.
He clerked for Chris, right? And then got a seat. Yeah, so that's how I remembered it.
And then Cochran was the next guy up. And then I forget who else I was working with, but then it was me and I did well. And I would get, Ojo Manini would call me upstairs. Did you ever work for those guys?
No.
So they would give you they would call you up in their office and, it was an important meeting and they'd give you a little slip and tell you, they're giving you a raise. You got like a $25 a week raise, but man, you walked out of that office feeling like, like holy shit, I'm making it, man. I got a $25 a week raise. It was nothing in the scheme of things, but it was something to me. And, and those little breadcrumbs or those little carrot and stick, that kind of kept me going and kept me moving forward and kept me learning.
And I think for me too, is based on where we came from, making $350 a week.
Yeah.
That's like big deal. And then getting a $25 a week raise.
It was nice.
Like, I think you and I both always had one foot in our past. We stayed grounded.
Always.
Because, my godfather used to say, you show me a guy with one foot in the past and one foot in the future, and I'll show you a guy who's pissing on today.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a great line. I got to remember that.
All right. So you're chugging along. So you were Chris Daly's clerk.
We had a situation, and I won't mention his name, but some people will remember this. Chris had arms like a.
He was. I stood shoulder to shoulder. Outstanding broker.
Great.
No
broker.
Nonsense.
No
machine gunner. Bang bang bang.
Got him done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had arms. He can reach across the pit and touch somebody. He was just a long, lanky guy. Nobody was there. And the guy that just got his seat was filling orders and it was Fed time or before Fed time. And remember Fed time? Remember
I was a nail biter all the time.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. We were in the third and fourths. All hell broke loose, and my broker froze, completely froze. So I've got the deck in my hand, and we're rallying. We rallied 10 ticks, so we've got sells that are through us, and we've got stops that should have been touched off. And then we break and, we come back to where we were and then we break 10 ticks and, the downside should have been filled. So I'm here, fill these. And he's just, he froze. He had like a breakdown in the pit. So somebody Kelly was gone. Somebody we called him the king. Somebody find the king. Find the king.
Chris Daly, the king. King Rat.
So the king came back and he said, what's going on? I said, all right, well, this is through us. This needs to be filled, but here are the stops. You've got 800 on the upside, but you've got, 1,000 lot stops. So you should cover those and blah, 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 blah. So Chris grabbed everything. He said, okay. And he said, how many are we off? And I gave him the count that we're off. He said, okay. And he just bing, 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 bing. Here you go. That's it? Yeah. So, we ended up getting out of that entire thing for like a $20,000 loss, for a $20,000 error. Which was
like a scratch for all that stuff.
Huge. Mm-hmm. Ojo Manini, I got another raise. That was nice. And, Chris, people talked about it, when those things would happen, that would spread.
Quickly, might I add.
Yes. So somebody came, I don't remember who it was, but somebody came and said that SRG, Steve Mendez, was looking for a clerk. Would you want to interview? I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Because that was a big time. Working for Steve, working for Derby, those guys were the guys that paid the most.
They were the powerhouses of the pit. The two biggest brokers were probably those guys, right?
Yes, and at that time, the biggest traders too. That's where you wanted to go. I knew that I had a shot at being backed. I knew that if I was going to get into the pit, it was going to be there. And I knew that I can make a really good amount of money there too. So if I didn't get my shot, at least I made enough money and I would get some experience. And they did huge business. But Terry Owen, who I still talk to.
I remember Terry well.
I love Terry. I talk to him almost every day. Talked to him yesterday for a good time. I talk to him almost every day. Terry's in my group too. So Terry had just gotten a seat and Steve only hired people on tryouts. So you got like a 2-week tryout. If you did well, maybe a month. But if you didn't do well, they'd can you. So you had to really bet on yourself. It was a gamble for the clerks that decided to do that. I
got to pause you on this. I know Ojo and Manini had no compete clauses, but that didn't apply to being a clerk. No, because I was just
clerking.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I would have. I don't know, but I'm guessing that I would have got my seat through them, and I'm glad I didn't. I know that those guys made. Depending on who you were and where you were, I know that those guys made money and they made good livings. Mm-hmm. But this goes back to a conversation. No, let me. I don't want to get too far ahead. But I knew I took a class by Dan Graham's Remember when the Merc used to, they provided these great classes for like continuing education classes for the members and the clerks. So when I was working for, I think, for John Fisher in the lumber, maybe Russell, I took a technical analysis class by the great Dan Gramza. I still talk to Gramza too. So Dan, the first thing that Dan said, I don't remember anything from that class, head and shoulder patterns and shit just never made any real sense to me. And, and I was also young and very immature to understand that sort of thing, But the thing that I remembered from that class was every trade you make has a theoretical potential to make your wildest dreams come true. Conversely, every trade you make has a theoretical potential to break you. So if you can learn how to manage your risk, then you have an unlimited upside. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to leave myself an unlimited upside. So I didn't want to fill orders for a big broker group and wind up having a nice career, but having a limited upside. I wanted to be able to limit my downside and leave myself with an unlimited upside, only limited by my own limiting beliefs, which I have plenty of, and we can get into.
Yes, we all do.
Yeah. I bet that was the first time in my life that I really bet on myself. I said, yeah, I'll take it. It was $1,000 a week. But it was, it was only an interim, like a probationary thing. And it was, what a group of people this was. Steve, great order filler. A lot of people have had negative experiences with him. He was nothing but good to me. Nothing but good to me. So Steve, Kenny Ward, and Brian Smith, and then Terry had just gotten his seat. The clerks were Terry, his cousin Tommy Sexton.
Love him.
I do too. Still talk to him a little bit.
I do too.
Moon.
Yep.
One of the Moon Mullins had maybe the most profound and lasting impact of any man in my life.
Really?
Yes. Moon means a lot. Meet Terry, Marty, and Rob. Marty Walsh and Rob had dinner with them. Oh, I don't know, 8 months ago, and I was able to tell him that once again. I love
awesome.
him.
Didn't he have a laugh like this?
Yeah.
Like
Yes, like a cartoon character. Yeah, he laughs like a cartoon character. But what a story! What a story he has. So no, that's
wasn't there any other clerks up there?
That's who you should get on this podcast.
I know Kevin, who clerked for Goldman. What was his last name?
Oh, Lavin?
Oh,
I drove in with Lavin.
What a human cartoon character he was in his
great.
day.
Holy shit, he was nuts. He was great. We drove in together in the same Southside carpool. The Southside carpool was me, Lavin, Kevin Fareder, Lamb.
I remember Lamb as well. Yep.
Lamb worked for Derby, and then various other sundry of characters that would come. Pat Sullivan, my brother Pat and Lavin hated each other. Fucking unbelievable shit. You never knew what was going to happen driving downtown with Lavin every day. Who he was going to yell at out the window, or what kind of story he was going to have when he got in the car.
When he was on one of his little funny rants, right? He'd get right in your face and he'd beat the hell out of you.
Yeah.
He'd be punching. I go, what? Why you got to attack me? He was a boxer in the Navy and everything. Like, it was a real physical. It was so funny. And I think he was a cook on the Navy ship. So we would talk about recipes and stuff all the time. What a character. He really he put a lot of color into that job. He stood right behind me. So
remember when he got his vasectomy? Do you remember that?
I do that. Yeah, I just forgot about that.
He had a party. He had a party to celebrate. Oh my God, what a nut! And then when he came out, he got his vasectomy, and we're waiting for him. He came out, and he's like, he's walking out like he's got the ice pack, and he's like acting like he's in tremendous pain. We got the door, and he kicked his heels and walked out. Every other guy in the waiting room was like, oh no, I'm gone. It was just good.
That's awesome.
When we were slow, he would take a $20 bill and attach it to chicken wire, with some gum, and throw it on the ground, or a $100 bill. And it was always the same broker. Always the same. He was a broker from the other side of the pit, who was walking around our pit and on our side, by the Mendez side, and he would see that he fell for it all the time. As he bent over to pick it up, Lavin would yank that string. Bent over again, and he would just the crazy stuff that he would do.
People don't understand, like, when you're in a high stress environment, and that is as high stress as you could be. When there's downtime, you go crazy. You do all kinds of practical tricks. The shark, then the shark turned into a penis, then the spurs, the gum traps, like the beach ball, everything, just crazy stuff. Remember the kid who found a roach on the floor, a big roach, and got a pull for him to eat it. And he ate the damn thing.
I hate that story. I hate even thinking about that. But yeah, or you remember the race that they had for the 300 pounders? You had to be at least 300 pounds, and you ran around the building, and the winner got like $5,000.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that, but Jimmy Place talked about that when he was on the podcast.
My God! Or the various guys that bet that they could throw a football or a 16-inch softball across the river.
Yep, and when Chili talked about that, I think he did it. Yeah,
he did it, and then Bobby Sitlow did it. They called him the chief. He was a Mickey Hoffman's son-in-law. He did it. Scott Dean of happy memory. He died a few years back, 10, 12 years. Dixie's son. He Scott was nuts too. Emo, who was a local. I don't want to get too far away.
I remember Emo.
Okay, I loved Emo. Emo had a great mind. He was a bully. He was the sweetest man in the world. He could be a bully and the sweetest man in the world in the same sentence. He was an amazing guy, and he had a great mind. He was a great trader. He was a terrorist to people he didn't like, but he was an interesting cat, and I had a love-hate relationship with him. Anyway, Emo bet Scott that he $10,000 that he would not dive into the Chicago River, and we were at Rivers, that he would not dive in and swim across. Scott was crazy enough to do it. Scott took his clothes off, got into his skivvies, and dove right in and swam. He jumped in and swam across the river. By the time he got across the river, the fire department was there and the cops were there. They took him to the hospital for tetanus shot, and then they took him to jail.
Hilarious.
Oh my goodness. He was a good trader. Scott was a good trader.
I'll just quickly, since we're on these little bets and stuff, one of the funniest ones with me was Mark D'Souza. Remember Susie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're clerks together. We're standing on the top step in the front month, and I'm talking to Gib Eshu about golf. And D'Souza's like, "Yeah, Lardino, you're not that fucking good at golf. I'll beat you at golf." And I knew he was just pulling my chain. I'm like, "You know what? I'll play you with just a 5-iron and a putter." He goes, "You got to bet." I go, "I changed my mind. I'll play you with just a putter." So we went out to Cog Hill out here. And I said, "I'm not going to play a whole round with a putter, but I'll let you pick the hole," right? So we get to the 5th hole, which is a par 3 over this huge ravine. So your tee is here, the green's up there, and there's a huge ravine. He's like, "I picked this hole." Well, I'd been going to the range, hitting this old Spalding blade putter that had an indestructible shaft at the range. I could hit the thing like 2 1/4, okay? So we get to this hole. It's like 150 yards over the ravine. He goes, "I'll go first." Boom. He hits it in the drink. He re-tees, hits it in the drink again. So now he's hitting 5 from the tee. I haven't taken my shot yet. So he goes, "All right, well, you go." I hit a bullet. It hit the hill on the other side. It bounced up like really high, and it landed like 10 feet from the pin. I couldn't hit a better shot with my 8-iron. He's like, "Fuck you." So I got dinner at Morton's for that.
Oh, that's great.
And then remember Nitro?
Oh, yeah.
So Nitro, we were talking golf, and I said, I'll give you 15 shots, and we can go to your course, the course of your choice. I go, or I'll give you 18 shots, but you have to walk and carry your clubs like I do. No cart. He goes, "You got to bet, So we went out to his, I forget the name of the course. It was something with the word Bonnie, and it was in Gurney. I never played there. And this particular day, it was like 88 degrees with high humidity, and it was brutal. And I'm plugging along, playing my game, and I'm walking, and he's getting all sweaty and shit, and I'm chipping away at it, stroke or two a hole. And then we get to the last 3 or 4 holes, and I hit the best shot of my life. I was on a par 5. It was 555 yards. I hit a nice drive down the middle, and I took my driver and I hit it off the turf because I hit a nice lie and everything, and I just hit a line drive, and it went up the hill and over toward the stick, and Gib was already up at the green because he had a cart, and he dropped to his knees. He's like, "Oh." I go, "What happened?" He goes like that. Oh. The ball curled around the cup. I would have gotten a 2 on a par 5. And when I got up to the green, Nitro was fighting all the way up the tree line, and we got up to the green. and I went to tap in this eagle putt, and I didn't even look at it. I just looked at him, and I went, dink. He's like, fuck you. So him and his wife and me and my girlfriend, who became my wife, we got dinner mornings. So those were my two big bets. Did you ever do any big bets yourself?
No,
any stupid bets? Good for you.
I don't like gambling. I don't like the feeling, ironically
You
enough.
don't like gambling.
Yeah.
Coming from a trader, that's funny.
I knew 1,000 bookies in my life. I never made a bet with the bookie. I hate going to Vegas. So, and, like all of those bets and things, I don't know. Yeah, I've always, my brothers and my dad were good golfers. I didn't start playing golf until COVID. I don't know. I don't know why I never really did. I just never liked the feeling.
All right, so now you're clerking with, we kind of framed out who was up there and stuff like that.
Joe Marconi. Joe Marconi was up there.
Oh, that's right, Joe. Good friends with Joe, John Marconi.
Yeah.
Their dad played with Ditka.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so what's going on now? You're clerking, plugging along.
Tommy Sexton had me convinced that I was going to get shit canned. Every 2 weeks, I was going to get fired. I mean, the dynamic of that group was Tommy was kind of the head clerk.
Right, that's what I remember too.
Johnny Bag of Donuts was our runner. He just started running for us.
Remember him too?
I remember when Moon named him the Bag of
Oh,
Donuts.
he named him?
Oh, yeah.
Another shout out to one of our sponsors, Nevis Nutrition, which is a vitamin and supplement shop in Lamont. Owner Joe Bosco, dear friend of mine. Joe is super knowledgeable in nutrition, extremely knowledgeable in fitness. All the top athletes, weightlifters, bodybuilders, they go over there. He's really instrumental in help coaching our young athletes too. He's located in Lamont. I'll put the address in the description as well.
Moon was great. Moon just stood behind me, and he was one of the best lines that I'd ever heard in my life. I thought that Moon was a tall Irish guy. He's a West Sider, I'm a South Sider. I thought we were going to have a lot. He didn't know anybody on the floor when he started. I didn't know anybody on the floor when I started. I thought we were going to have some things in common, and he just stood there and didn't say anything. He was intimidating. I said something to him about that one time. He said, "Look, I've got friends. I don't need new friends. I'm not coming down here to make friends." All right, okay. I told him that at dinner not long ago. I've said that to him before too. So I learned. I learned how to my brain works where my brain works quickly, and any of us who are good at this, can all. I think relate. I can take in a lot of information quickly and act on it decisively, and I remember it. And I have, I guess, kind of near photographic memory for numbers, especially.
Which is very helpful in the pits.
Yes. I started watching Citibank, Murphy.
Super busy desk. He had a lot of people up there.
He did, and they had a lot of business.
And all the way up top too, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they were hard. It was hard to do their business because they were very, very demanding. Mm-hmm. And then after that was Goldman and Sun Plaza, Solomon Brothers. So
and Goldman and Citi were in the same line, but Goldman was a little below them,
in the middle.
Right?
Yeah, in the middle of the range. And then Plaza was down to the left.
Yep.
So that was, and Plaza would split their business between Mo Crone and Kenny Ward.
Now, were you watching all three of them?
No,
because they're not in the same line. It's a lot of ground to cover.
I would watch Citi, and then like Helen Flanagan and Tommy Dorman, who were at the end of the Goldman desk.
Gotcha. Yep.
And then I would, Moon did all of Goldman, and then I would do, like Helen and Tommy, and then when Moon had gone into the pit and started to fill orders, I think that's actually when I came back from when I went to seminary. But
which we got to talk about that too.
When I got back from seminary, then I watched Goldman, and every so often, I would do some Plaza stuff for Kenny. If I forget who did Plaza at that time, who clerked for Plaza, but Donnie Phillips did for Mo Crone. And I forget who did for us. But then when he was on break or when he was gone, then I would. Mm-hmm. And I like doing that because I was, if I knew that Donnie was bullshit with somebody and Charlie Trayer turned up, put his eyes up, I was all over him. Mm-hmm. I didn't take my eyes off those guys. I whoever I was supposed to watch, I watched. I would sit and carry conversations and bust balls like everybody else, but I didn't take my eyes off of who I was supposed to watch.
And I just thought about this concept. Every desk had a different personality makeup.
Yes.
And I think that's contingent on who's leading the desk,
mm-hmm.
right? So Murphy was real aggressive at Citi. So and he had Curtis with him and all the other people. Mm-hmm. They would adopt that aggressive slam on the desk, right?
Yeah.
Goldman was a little more smooth to me. So they They were demanding. And Plaza, those people, it was like they didn't even have an emotion. No. That's what I was seeing as a clerk. Like they all had their different nuances, you know.
John Murphy would pound on the desk, scream at you, and get your attention and give you 100 lot. And he wanted everybody to see that he was giving you 100 lot. Charlie or Kevin Goggin at Plaza would just look up. And if you weren't looking at them, they would go right down the line. And, you know, instead of being loud, hey, it's 500 at 3, he would, you know, he would just say 5 at 3. If you wanted to do 1,000 lot, it wasn't 1,000 at, you know, 1,000 at 3, get them done.
Yep.
1,000 at 3.
The little slang like this, 1,000 at 3, you know.
Yeah. Bid, 3 on 1,000. 1,000 at 3. Bid, 2.5 on 500. 500 at 2.5. You know, I mean, you got the you had a little each guy had a different one too when they were using it with you, which is cool. Yeah, you got the shorthand down, and if you were good, you knew how to communicate. And you know, a good clerk is worth their weight in gold. You know, and I think like
true.
Any broker will be able to tell, any order failure will tell you that is, you know, it was our job as clerks to protect our broker. It was also our job as clerks to protect our customer.
Yes.
You know, and a great clerk would be able to do that. And if you can protect both of them at the same time, you know, as best you can, then you are going to have a future down there in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Even if you were just a really highly paid clerk. You know, there were guys down there that made $150,000-$200,000 a year for a long time. You know, by the time people were paying that kind of dough, I was trading. But, you know, it was that sort of, you know, mentality that you had to have. What is my job here and how can I exceed it? How many clerks were on the floor, Frankie? 3,500, 4,000?
Oh, I don't know.
You know, I mean, thousands, right? And everybody wanted to be the next, you know, the next big broker, the next big trader or something. So, you know, how are we going to differentiate ourselves from everybody else? My mother had breast cancer surgery and I was at work that day. I got my wisdom teeth impacted. I had those removed. I was at work the next day until they sent me home, you know, but I showed up.
Yeah.
I drank and partied like everybody else, but I came in, you know, we had to be there. We were paid to be there at 6:45 or to 7, you know, and we didn't leave until 2. And for years we didn't have breaks. We were so busy.
Me and my guys didn't take breaks either with being a good clerk, right? It is very nuanced. So to protect your broker and to protect your customer, there's a lot of moving parts there. And I like to share this story, you know, also how you come in the pit. If you come in the pit with urgency to tell your broker a big order, that right away is getting everybody's attention.
You're right. Everybody knows.
Then you go like this, and then now everybody's attention's on the broker, right? And after a few of those, your broker will have a tell too. They'll be like, so the calmer you come in, the less.
Look, to illustrate it, it could be 2. You look in the pit and it's 2 on 1,000. This big broker's 2 on 100, or local. You know, you look around, it's 200,000. If you come into that pit all excited and everybody sees you, you grab your broker, you whisper in his ear, and he turns around and goes, I'll sell you 52. They're all going to drop their hands because he knows he's going to start selling bids. So now they're all 1 bid or 1/2 bid. You know, if you walk over to the broker and, you know, very calmly just say, sell 1,000 at 2. And, you know, and even the brokers, Steve was very good at this. Steve can get off all kinds of size because he would be able to kind of camouflage what he was doing. And he wouldn't run over people, but he would fill his stuff. And then, you know, if they did get run over, he would look for them on the other side. You know, there was always some give and take between a good broker and the locals in the pit. But it was interesting to watch. And you know, and there was a whole nuance to the entire thing. You could a bad clerk can turn the market bid to offer just because the locals know what to look for and know what to spot. I did the same thing as a local, you know, but if we're sitting in the Nasdaq and it's even on 100 and I'm sitting there even on 50, you know, on a 50 lot, that's 50 grand every 10 points. Yep. So even on 50, and you know, all the brokers had different tells, you know, like, you know, if a broker came in, he's like, bid, even on 20. Sell you 20. Now what do you do? You know, so I'm going to drop my hand. I'm not going to buy 50. If he turns around and goes 100 at even and we're rallying, I'll take him, you know. Now, we can talk about this as we get closer, you know, as we're talking about trading. But it's, you know, like every broker had a tell. Mark Spector or Troy Mertz, both great order fillers. But, you know, I always knew if I was short and I'm pressing the market lower, you know, 50 to even, sell the 90s, down tick 80s, down tick 70s and painting the tape, you know, and I sell some 70s. these guys get a little bigger in their chair. They have a stop coming someplace. I know. And now their eyes get a little bit bigger, and one at 60, now they're ready to go. One at 60, bid. I'm 60 bid. I'll sell you 50, sell you 50, sell you 100. Buying. You can tell, you can see. So, and a good local knew how to protect the broker. A good local would know, I know he's got a big stop at 60, and I'm not gonna fuck him on him. I'm not gonna touch off the 60s and offering the market down to 40 to buy 30s.
Right.
And if the market's breaking, I'll give him a partial. I'll buy 20 from him and I'll be happy.
Right.
So, and they would then know, a good broker would know how to take care of the local on the back end too. So there was a lot of, it wasn't just brute strength, it wasn't just, rote memory and remembering things and be able to be good at that. There was a lot of nuance to it, whether we're clerks in the front month or we're locals or brokers.
So a guy who was really good at reading the tells was Gerard Shannon in the second option, because that's where I spent most of my career. And I'd watch him. He was a master. Andy and I, when Andy would come with an order, he would whisper in my ear, not panicked ever. So he would just whisper in my ear, and automatically Gerard, he's looking at me in the eye. And I knew it. So what I started to do is I would get this big order, which was right on the market. And, Danny would whisper and Gerard would be looking right at me. And I'd put my cards in my pocket and my pen in my pocket, and I would turn around and put my back to the pit while I'm supposed to be filling the order. And I'd go, Andy, look in the pit. Is Gerard still looking at me? So now my back's to the pit, and Andy's looking into the pit, and he's like, he's not looking at you anymore. And then I turn around and I go, sold. Yeah. Otherwise, he would pick me off, just stupid stuff like that.
I don't regret anything, but the biggest mistake I made, and I made a couple of them, but a big one was Jerry and I partnered up. When I went into the hog pit, we had partnered up, and I had one of the Lang brothers' nephews was on the headset. So we were doing a little bit of ARB in the hogs. This is I traded for Stottlemyre for a little bit of time. Stottlemyre was trying to update market profile into the age of algorithms, and he had me and another guy trade for him. And that brought me, I was done. And, I was finished. And we'll get to that too. But Jerry, we had a buyout, like a buyout of the deal. And I think it was like $250,000, so for 225 or whatever it was, 150, 200, I can buy myself out of my deal with Jerry. And he said, listen, don't do it, because, I'm starting this company, and, you'll be a partner with me and we'll move forward together. It's a huge business and hugely profitable, and he's just doing great. And he's a great guy. He deserves every minute of it. He deserves every bit of that success. And I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity to partner with him. Jerry, I wish I'd have done it. But if I did do that, I wouldn't be here with you, Frankie. If I did do that, I don't know if I'd be alive. Everything I had gone through, has fueled me. And, I'm in good shape physically, and, I work hard to be in good shape, and I've got a great group of people around me. I make a difference in the world,
And we'll get to that. We're getting there quickly. So you, now how do you transition from clerking to, now you have a badge? What happened there? Well, first of all,
I went to the seminary.
Yes,
first.
Let's talk about that. So you were clerking for Mendez, and then you just got the calling to go to the seminary.
My mom had gone to a place in Medjugorje, a place called Medjugorje in the former Yugoslavia. It's in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the Blessed Mother appears in apparitions, and she had come back from that place with a renewed sense of faith, with a renewed sense of peace, with a deep sense of faith. We'd always gone to mass. We'd always been faithful Catholics. And, I don't remember praying the rosary together as a family and things like that, but, we went all the time. But now there was meaning behind it. There was reason behind it. So I decided I'm going to go there. And it was my first trip was in 1989, and it was in the middle of the mountains in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in a Croatian area, and it was the closest thing to heaven that I've ever experienced on earth. I've been there 4 times, and I had gone back during the Civil War. I'd marched in a worldwide peace march there during the Croatian, Serbian, the whole breakup of the former Yugoslavia. So anyway, it was, I came back and I was going to Mass in the morning at St. Peter's before they opened. I'd go there during the day to pray a rosary, or I'd go to confession there a couple times a week. Remember St. Peter's on Madison Street?
Yep. Beautiful church.
It was great. So I was going to Mass on the weekends. It was just, I was living my faith. I had I was always Catholic, but I had a real conversion to my faith. I had a real spirituality behind there. Reading the Bible and trying to understand the gospel and reading scripture. So Steve was then expanding his business to every option in the Euros. So Marty was going to go into the second option. Terry was he was already in the backs. And then I think Rob was going to, Moon was in the third and fourths, and then Rob was going there too. So we were all getting our seats around the same time. And I had, at that meeting, after, the meeting where we all knew we were getting our seats, before I signed a deal or something, I knew that I needed to get this out of my system. So I pulled Steve aside and I said, I think I'm going to go to the seminary. Before I study this, I want to, or before I sign this contract, I think I want to go to pursue the idea of being a Catholic priest. And, Steve is Jewish. He looked at me like, oh, whatever. But Steve liked me, and I liked him too. And he said, listen, if you finish or you don't go through it with it, come back, and there'll always be a spot for you. I said, okay. So I went down. I didn't want to study for Chicago because Chicago was too big. It was too political and, a little bit too far, like anything goes within the archdiocese. And it was also during the breaking, this is in 1992, two-ish. So it was like in the breaking of the child sex scandal, and, which was touched, our lives. It touched our lives. And so I didn't want to be anywhere near that. So I decided to study for the Diocese of Peoria, Peoria, Illinois. And at the time, Peoria had a more traditional Bishop John Myers. And they were ordaining more guys every year in Peoria than Chicago was, because Chicago was more, left, or kind of, doing things that, whatever you wanted to do. And the theology was a little bit wonky. And Peoria was more traditional. And, so they were attracting, those sorts of guys from all around the country. So Chicago would ordain 8 guys. Peoria, Illinois would ordain 12 or 14. So I went down there and I met with the vocation director, and they accepted me. I went through a battery of tests. They had to do all kinds of psychological testing and all kinds of interviews because, again, it was during the sex scandal. They accepted me, and I went to St. Mary's in Winona, Minnesota. I studied at the Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary, and I was an instant A student. I never did well in school. I never paid attention. But now the things that I'm reading, I'm 23, I think, years old when I went, or 22, maybe 23, almost 24. I was older, more mature. I had worked at the Merc since I was 18. And, I had a different perspective on life. And for the first time in my life, I had structure. I had to be up at 5. We had morning prayer at 5:30, 5:45, rosary after, Mass, breakfast, class. Afternoon, workout, evening prayer, compline, and then sleep.
Okay, let's pause on the seminary. And I just want to say, at that juncture, when you made a decision to go to the seminary, what were your living arrangements? Did you have a significant other in your life? What was going on there?
I did. I was dating Maureen Finnegan, a beautiful Irish girl, actually from Midway Airport, but her father was an Irish immigrant that built a lot of the homes out here. Anyway, so I was living at home, very typical, I think, of that time was, especially with ethnic parents, is, there's no reason to leave here.
You said 92?
92, I think I went.
24?
24. So yeah. 92, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I left I would have graduated in 96. Maureen kind of, it was part of that decision, she saw the segue of it, and, I talked to her about it, and, so she was part of it. And then I left, I went. I had a big party. We had a big party at our house. It was a blast.
I would have loved to have been on a fly in the wall when you had the conversation with your girl, because now There's no more relationship, boy-girl stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That party was very sad. It was a very, very sad night. It was joyful. It was fun, but it was very sad because it was the last time I was with her. It was the last time that I was with her, boyfriend and girlfriend.
I can't even imagine a bigger life change decision. I mean, my son, when he was 19, he's like, I joined the Marine Corps. That's shocking, right? But that's a 4-year commitment.
Yeah.
You were like changing your life to make a lifetime commitment. That's a huge deal.
And a celibate commitment.
Right.
Now, ironically enough, I was never more popular with women than when I was supposed to be celibate.
I don't know what the science behind that is, but that is funny.
Like the forbidden fruit. The rector of the seminary was a guy named Father Raker, and if you broke celibacy, you had to be accountable. You had to go be accountable. That was a big thing, accountability. So because of my time working at the Merc, I learned how to be accountable. If you had an error, you had to immediately bring your broker's attention to it. You had to immediately be accountable. So I was fine being accountable, and I'd come down and they all called me Maddie. So, door opener, good morning, Father. Door opener, door closed. So he would pull out the little purple stole and he would give me, shut the door. And I go to confession to him. It was always confession because, I had things to confess. It was an interesting time. It was great. Like I said, I had structure in my life, and that structure brought meaning to my life. And intellectually, I was making connections that I had never made before. My first class was a simple logic, Aristotelian logic, by a priest named Father Fabian, a mystic. The man was a mystic. He was a Dominican priest that was an absolute mystic. Father Andrew Fabian. Good, better, best. Never let it rest. He said that stuff long before
the coach
Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, and he was a Thomistic scholar. He was a scholar of St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas is responsible for a lot of the philosophy behind Catholic teaching. And so the way that he explained everything, just war theory. But so in order for something to be true, in logic, there's got to be A plus B equals C, major premise, minor premise, conclusion. There cannot be any contradiction in that, Now, to be able to learn how to think rationally and to think things through in a logical sense was, I think I always had the basis of it, but now that I had the sort of the formula behind it, really kind of, was stimulating, incredibly stimulating. And to read, then to also read the classics and to start to read the great books and to study, Augustine and other spiritual leaders was just, it was mind-bogglingly beautiful.
Can I just pause you on this?
Please.
Now? I'll just, we'll get right back into it. When you're studying logic, logic only works on the logical, first of all.
Yes.
But
see that now.
The hard part about having a debate or an argument, and I don't mean argument like fight argument, but we're arguing over the data, is that we have a problem agreeing on the data, right? Like the given, like you said, logic A plus B equals C. Well, for you to have a debate about that, you have to agree or debate what that means. You have to agree on the given. It's like a geometry problem. I don't know if you remember geometry, but they'll give you a given. They'll say two parallel lines are intersected by a third line. Prove A and C are congruent and B and D are congruent. That's the given, right? If you don't even agree on the given, then how can you even have a debate, right? It's like, so, and I don't want to get too far off course, but when you watch a video that they keep replaying on the news over and over and over again, especially in this day and age where there are probably dozens of different angles of video and they keep showing the one and you draw a conclusion from that data, you're kind of flying blind, right? It's 100%. Like the thing in Minnesota with the guy who got shot. I keep telling people, the one thing we all have in common, whether you think it was justified or not, is none of us were there. And there's a lot more information that none of us probably will ever know. So why are we going to be fighting about this? So I just wanted to take a little side street on that.
It's a great point. Let me give an example. Like, to use a divisive topic is the issue of life. In order for something to be true, there cannot be contradiction in it. Major premise would be every human being has the right to life, right? And we can all agree on that. Every human being has the right to life until you give it up. Give it up by, taking somebody else's life. But, everybody fundamentally has the right to life. Every human being has the right to life. minor premise. A fetus is a human being. Well, it can't live without that. Separate issue. Fetus is a human being. It's not a dog. It's not a cat. It's not a rock. It's not an angel. It's a human being at the lowest stages of actualization. We're all in a state of being and becoming, and that fetus is a human life in the state of being and becoming. Therefore, ergo, fetus has a right to life. Well, can't live without, and, it's part of the, well, okay, separate issues. If you want to talk about that issue, we can logically go and separate that issue from this issue, but we can agree on this. Now we can talk about other things. The civil discourse or the uncivil discourse at this point never is able to get to a conversation like that, because it becomes about opinion and it becomes about, less about fact, and so you're not going to be able to even agree upon the fact, and let alone everything else.
That's the given. When you say the fact, I call that the given. The given is the initial premise, and we can't agree on that. Then we're lost. We're spinning our wheels.
It becomes about emotion, and it becomes about opinion, and everything becomes. Instead of objective, everything becomes subjective, and subjective morality. And, there's a lot more. As I've grown older, I've realized that there's a lot more gray in the world, and not everything is black and white. But there is subjective reality. There is objective reality. There is objective truth. And if we can start from that premise, then maybe we can all come to understand one another again. If we can believe that there are things that bind all of us together in an objective sense, then maybe we can accept one another again for all of our differences. For all of our differences and for all of the craziness in the world, then maybe we can become part of the solution, not the problem. If we just keep looking at the things that divide us emotionally and in an opinion-based way without looking and making it subjective, it's subjective. You believe that, so it's true for you. No, then there's nothing that binds us together. There's nothing that we can unite around. And even saying that is objective in and of itself,
In my book, I have a chapter called Facts. And the first sentence is, every time I hear somebody use the word facts, I cringe, because we don't derive our opinions from facts. We use our opinion to choose what the facts actually are. And I use the car accident scenario where you and I could be standing on the street corner, shoulder to shoulder, and we witness a car accident in front of us, and then the police come and ask us to tell our story. Your story will not exactly match my story. And then if we're asked to retell our own story a week later, a month later, a year later, our story is going to change. So if that's the case with human nature, then what are the facts? It's really hard. And I believe true faith in God and Jesus gives us clarity. Like, we do see more of the singular truth. And as we wane away from that, I believe the devil's has a bigger part of us, right? So I've met many people that profess to be devout Christians. Some of them are pastors, but they're chronic worriers. They worry about everything. And I'm thinking to myself, is that not a contradiction to what it's all about?
Matthew 6, not to sound like a Protestant, but Matthew 6 talks about how, I can't quote it because I am Catholic, but Matthew 6 talks about how, aren't you greater than the birds of the air? The birds of the air don't worry about what they're going to eat. They don't worry about what they're going to clothe. And aren't you better than them? Aren't you greater than them? Yes. So what do you have to worry about? I've got nothing to worry about.
Amen to that.
I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not going to hasten it, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to it now. I'm doing all I can to live to be 150. Hopefully Elon will figure it out by that time. But, I'm looking forward to that experience, and I'm looking forward to that transition. I'm looking forward to being embraced in the, what Aquinas called the beatific vision, and so because I live in faith, I live in hope, faith, hope, and love, the three theological virtues. And because I seek to grow in that all the time and to bring other people to it, because of that, I don't worry about anything. Look, Frankie, when Jen and I were, at our brokest, after MF Global especially, when Jen and I were at our brokest and we moved from Lake Forest back to the south side of my dad's house, that was a tough time. I worried about how I was going to be able to do this and do that and do this and do that. But I took action, and I put one foot in front of the other, and I let go of a lot of the trauma, the pain, the generational bonds, the things that held me back. My ego was crushed, but my self-confidence wasn't. My faith wasn't. I may not have been very faithful at that time. I drank too much. I smoked too much. I was not in good shape. But God was faithful to me. So I look back on that time and I see that God did. I had 5 kids and I was living at my dad's house on the South Side, dude. I can look back at that as the best time of my life because it set the stage for the rest of my life. And we were all okay. My kids were okay. We didn't have the roof over our heads that we wanted, but we had a roof over our heads. We didn't have the clothes on our back that we wanted, but we had clothes on our back. We had we had cars. We had education. Our kids ate, and we were okay. And that gave me the ability to be able to move forward and then to be able to redefine what wealth is and then to recreate what wealth is.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said.
But it all started with my experience in the seminary. It all started with my mother coming home from Medjugorje and having a renewed sense of faith and me following her lead because she was willing to share that with me. It all started there, and that set the tone. Now, you mentioned Satan. The greatest thing that Satan has done is to convince the world he doesn't exist. Everything is subjective. There is no God. There is no Satan. None of this shit exists. That's the best trick that he can pull. And I had in the seminary, I had a silent retreat over the Screw Tape Letters. Did you ever read the C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters? It's a small book. It's incredibly entertaining and it's incredibly insightful. It's called The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Everybody should read it. And we had a whole week-long silent retreat based on that. And it's about an apprentice. It's about an apprentice devil being mentored by the head devil, and how he was supposed to keep his charge, his subject, distracted in church. Make sure you get him to think about, the woman's dress next to him, and he will think less of Jesus. Make sure that, just little things like that. If he's praying, get him, distract him. Little things like that. So you start to think about how Satan works on us, and the way that he does is by keeping us away from things that are ultimately real. So God, I may not have been particularly faithful to God, but God was faithful to me. And I may not have been the best husband to the love of my life, but she loved me. My kids loved me. My kids didn't care whether I had $1 in my pocket or they just cared that I was there. I coached their teams. I showed up for them, and because of that, life got better again. I was able to figure out how to trade on the screens. I was able to figure out how to make money again. And I was honest about another thing I learned from Mike Mullins, from Moon. I was honest and open about my experience. I don't hide any of it.
I believe, and tell me what you think about this, that God designates certain people, I call them chosen ones, people to spread his light more than others. Not everybody is born to be a warrior. So we're going to call the chosen one the warriors. The warrior is strategically designed for the struggle, and then you get him. He delivers the struggles to you, knowing what the outcome will be. If you don't go through all that shit, you're not the person you are. And look at now, you've bloomed into, you touch a lot of lives, and you stay connected with people. All these dinners you have with all these guys and stuff like that, you're a chosen one, and it's never easy for the chosen one, and Jesus is the prime example of that.
Truly. When my mother certainly thought I was a chosen one. I don't know. I agree with you. And, and it's, I see what you mean. I don't like to think of myself that way, but yes, and I accept that mantle. We all have our gifts, we all have our talents, and we all have our abilities. And we have to discuss. Part of what they mean by maturity is by, we discover who we are, we discover what our talents are and what our abilities are. And then we have a choice either to enter into that and to become fully that, or to back away from it and to live in our appetites. If I'm thirsty, drink. If I'm hungry, eat. If I'm tired, sleep. If I'm horny, do whatever you do, right? And then all of that stuff then becomes bastardized. So now I'm living in my appetites and I'm not living in my spirit. And then, I'm not fulfilling my potential. I'm not accepting the mantle that Christ has for me. I'm not becoming who God wants me to be. And if I'm not becoming who God wants me to be, then I'm not myself. I don't have peace. If I don't have peace, I don't have faith. I don't have hope. I don't have love. And I'm a banging gong, a clanging cymbal. And I'm no good to anybody. And I've been that guy. I don't want to be that guy anymore.
Yeah, me too. One of my guests here, Robert Renteria, Dr. Renteria, he said in the last podcast, the two best days of my life are the day I was born and the day I realized why I was born, right? And that's what I call purpose. So I always say you have to be very careful when you pray because God sees all suffering. So if you're saying prayers, asking for stuff for yourself, like, I hope I get the biggest raise or whatever, I don't even pray for God to heal anyone because I feel like that's intruding in God's plan.
Oh, I
right?
do. I pray for spiritual healing.
Yes. So I always say for those suffering, I pray that they find their peace and strength through you.
Yes.
Right. And I don't ask for outcomes,
Yeah,
So,
I don't either. When we were broke, I never asked for my money. Oh God, just all I need is $100,000 a day. All I need is another 6-figure day to. I did do that, but that was on the downward spiral. I had to learn how to make money again. That's another thing. We can get into it.
We will.
But I had to learn how to be successful again. And I had to slow things down. I had to live in my spirit, not my appetites, and I had to know what my strengths and my weaknesses were, and I had to protect myself from my weaknesses and maximize my strengths. So I never asked for that money back. I never asked for my wealth back. I never asked I never did that. I just asked that God would illuminate my path forward and help me to be able to provide for my family. That's it. And then the path was illuminated. When God oftentimes will break our spirit, he'll break our hearts in order to be able to heal us. I would pray that the humility prayer. There's a litany of humility, and I'd pray the litany of humility, and God heard that prayer, and He eventually crushed my ego, and He saved my soul. Because He crushed my ego, or because my ego was crushed, and I accepted it, and I started to look at things in a different way. That was, God giving me the grace to be able to save me, and not save me from sinfulness. I mean, I still am in need of God's grace every day and God's forgiveness every day. But God saved my soul the day that He broke my heart.
You need to write a book. All right, so we went off on a tangent again, a good one, giving us things to revisit. So now, what caused you to leave the seminary?
My mother got her third cancer, lung cancer, and I was leading a retreat. I was the only college seminarian to lead this retreat of young kids that were thinking of the priesthood. And it was a really cool thing called the Emmaus Days. And then I had one semester left of college seminary, and then I was going to go to Rome for 4 years. When you go to Rome, you're there for 2 years. You don't come home, and your family can come see you, but you just can't come home for 2 years. So I had one semester left in Winona, and then I was off to the North American College in Rome, and I didn't want to be gone. My mother was sick, and it was she was stage 3 lung cancer. She had 2/3 of her right lung removed, and I wanted to be around for that. So I took a leave of absence from school, and I went right back to the Merc. Still have that semester left of school to do. Never finished.
So your plan was to go back. You were staying for your mother's care and stuff.
Yes.
And you were just making money, and then you were going to go back.
Yes, I was going to go back. That was the original plan. And my mother was, it took her, a couple of years to kind of get over it. So I was there, with my brothers, and we were all together. And, I went back. I stayed in communication with Steve, and I would come down for like holidays. Guys would take a vacation during the summertime, and he would say, "Hey, listen, I need a guy for a week." Yeah, and if I didn't, I was usually in a Paris assignment. In Peoria, we dressed like priests. We wore the collar and the cassock and surplice. So it was like the 1940s, in 1994, 95 when I left, or maybe 96. I married Nicole in 96, so it was 95. So I walked onto the floor and found Steve, and Steve said, "Yeah, go up by Gip and I'll get you a jacket, and then just go up by Gip. So I went up by Gip and I was Steve's guy. So Kenny and Brian didn't like me a whole lot. Brian turned and said, we don't need anybody. I said, okay. So, I figured, fuck it, I'll go, I'll find a job in 10 minutes. I'm walking off the floor and Steve's walking on. Where are you going? I told you, go up on the step and start working. Ask Brian who he wanted you to watch. So Steve brought me over and told Brian, Matt's working here. So I don't remember who I started to watch, but Brian was not too thrilled about it. He fired me. He tried to fire me once a week. He'd rip my badge off and say, "You fucking get out of here," and throw it into the pit. So anyway, I got my job back, and it was a difficult time. I was unsure of what I wanted to do, and then I got a little lazy. I'm down there, and I'm making money again, and all of the guys that we had clerked with, Marty, Rob, everybody had big businesses. Everybody was doing great. Rob was married. Rob Crescione was married, and he had a couple of kids, and he had this beautiful home in Lincoln Park. Terry had his kids were getting older. He had a beautiful home in Park Ridge, and I'm back on the south side at my mom's house. I got to figure this out. So I went to the JUF dinner. Steve ran the Jewish United Fund dinner, and I went to I think Alan King was the great comedian. Alan King was the entertainment, and Jeff Brady and Kim Molinari had gotten together because Nicole Stavros thought I was good looking, and I thought she was good looking. So they introduced us, and then Nicole and I started dating, and we were dating 6 months and got engaged, and we were married within a year.
Let me pause you on Nicole, because I remember her. Was she on the floor at that time when you met her, or she came in? Okay.
She was on the floor until she got pregnant with our daughter Genevieve.
Okay, I remember her briefly. Yeah,
yeah. She had her seat, and she stood in the Euros. I don't want to piss her off, but I don't think she was much of a trader. She stood in front of her own man. I sold you 50, bought 50, and she'd go shopping. Yeah,
which was kind of, there were a lot of setups like that in the pit. So
yeah, I would have done that with my kids if they'd have come down. I
understand.
Maybe not that, you know what I mean. Oh, I would have. So anyway, Nicole and I get married, and Steve was then kind of backing out of the business. This is in 96-ish.
And I have to ask this, was because I know Steve was involved in a high-profile divorce.
Yes, his divorce was when I was gone, and we would talk about it every so often. It's one of the reasons why Steve was good to me, because during his high-profile divorce, we would communicate a little bit, and stayed in contact. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people have a lot of negative things, a lot of negative experience with him. I don't. He was good to me. So, and this is part of it. So Steve came to me and said, listen, there's no room to fill orders. He had bought Robbie Phillips's deck. You remember when he did that? Mm-hmm. And that didn't work. And he was like, yeah, I'm done. So he did what he had to do. And he said, listen, though, if you want to trade, I'll back you to trade. You come up with $10,000 for your own, or come up with money to put in your account. Just don't go debit, and then pay me the haircut. And I think the haircut was like an $80, a day thing. It was like the interest on the T-bill or whatever. So the Nasdaq was a new pit. It was just started.
And to this point, you've never traded?
Never
Not
traded.
Even like done phone trades or whatever?
No. Got to go back to Gulf War. I had the great idea that I was going to go trade night bonds. So I went and got my seat at the Board of Trade, my item seat, and I was, oh my God, a kid. This is when we were clerking together, Frankie. I mean, it's like 90 maybe. When was the first Gulf War? 1990. So, because I was in the night bonds the day that we invaded Kuwait or Iraq, and Iraq, and all of the day guys came in. Charlie D, Baldwin, Anakini, Ryan, all of it. It was amazing, and I sat there and watched these legends of trading, just huge. And the Board of Trade is different than the Merc. The ARB is different. Sold for everything. Yep. I was lost. 1,000 lots disappearing. Charlie D was sick. He had his cancer then. Charlie D was a legend, dude. A legend. I had no business trading. None. That was the last day I went into the pit. I stood there, watched, realized I was way out of my, league, and I left. So this was my first sort of, mature, real, attempt at trading. Yeah. I didn't trade on the screens.
So not real. You didn't really have a trading experience for the most part. Okay. So now,
just clerking.
So now you're kind of pseudo backing yourself. Steve's behind you a little bit.
Steve backed me. I had saved some money through the years. I put that in my trading account. And
you remember how much it was?
10,000.
Okay.
I started with 10 grand. My seat lease was 3,200.
You had not a big float there, right?
No. And then you remember when a new guy, a clerk would get a seat, and everybody would come in and kind of bone him up. Hey, Pax! Oh, look at that! My trading badge is Pax.
PAX.
Yes, which means peace in Latin. So oh, Pax, great name. I sold you 5, I bought 5. I sold you 2, I bought 2. I sell you.
Yeah, they're giving you bones so you can get a little money.
Get a little kick. So I think I made like 7,000-8,000 in bonuses. Yeah, I was kind of like an anomaly. I think I worked hard at people liking me. I like to be liked. So I worked hard at people liking me,
and you succeeded at that. No, I mean, I didn't know you that well, but I liked you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, thanks.
I don't think you ever walked off that far with somebody not liking you. That might have been envious of you or whatever, but
I tried not to.
You're a pretty damn likable guy. I'm just saying.
I tried to be that. So I still do. And I was a seminarian, and that was a little strange. So I don't know. I remember I got boned up pretty good for a week, but the Nasdaq was $100 a tick. So we traded at 1 point. So if you bought one at even and sold it at a 1, it's $100.
Which the euros was just 25.
Yeah, right. 100 a tick. We did I think the daily volume was like 3,000 or 4,000, so not a lot. The open interest was small. The pit was very small. There was some CGX was in there. Craig Gordon, who was a great guy, DMARC trader. There were some old currency guys in there. I think that's who populated the pit then. And so Dixie was there.
Harry the Hat came in eventually.
Yeah,
too.
Well, a lot of people ended up coming in. Harry was fucking unbelievable. I love Harry. Dixie liked me, because I would do Dixie's stuff. He'd come into the front. Do you remember how he would do his thing? He would come over to me and he'd say, "What's there?" And if you gave Dixie in the front month euros, if you gave him size on the bid, you better be right, because he wanted to get that off and then wanted the market to turn. So if you showed him 2 on 1,000, he'd say sell him. He wanted his 1,000 at 2 filled, and he wanted it 2 off when you were done. So then 1,000 at 2, 1,000 at 2. So I got good at it. So he would break out his comb, take that comb out of his pocket,
I remember that.
comb his hair, and then go spread him off, and then go into the break room and smoke. He would crouch down, smoke that cigarette, grab that comb, brush his hair, and go back out again. So I walk into the Nasdaq, and it was a very not much bigger than your office. It was a small pit, and there was no place to stand. But Dixie and his son Scott were there, and Dixie said, "We'll stand sideways. Come over here and stand with us." So Dixie gave me my first spot in the pit, which was very nice of him.
Let me pause. I don't remember Dixie's name. What was his name?
James Dean.
James Dean. Yeah, Jimmy Dean. Okay, yeah.
Oh, what a guy he was. What a guy, and a great trader. Ballsy.
You would never know though. Like, he seemed wacky. He'd come in the pit out of no. He'd just fly in and he'd go, "To offer, whatever."
Thousands.
Yeah, he seemed like a wacky professor.
Do you remember what they used to say about him? What the line was?
No.
I hate saying this, but the line on Dixie was that his wife had more money than he could lose.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I forgot about that. That's hilarious.
But he was a great trader. I mean, people, just the ball busting that went on. Dixie was a great trader, and he was a great guy. He was a great dude.
I got to pause you on this. Ball busting, he had to endure some degree of ball busting.
Some degree
with the seminary and coming back and right.
Oh, it was vicious. Holy shit. Father Mulcahy. I was called all kinds of crazy shit. Bishop, here comes the bishop. Just shake my head and, all right. Oh, it was so much fun. That's, when I look back, that's the shit that I miss. That's the stuff I miss. It was the incessant ball busting. So like in my group, Frank, you got to come in. In my little trading group, me, Marty, Rob, Terry, there's a bunch of board of trade guys, Danny Lertzman, a huge natty gas trader from New York. And, and when, just like in the pit, at 8:30, if the market if the S&P isn't doing anything, by 8:45, we're bullshitting about what we had for dinner and busting each other's balls and laughing and joking. And, Rob and I are always competing about, how we're working out. And Rob will make fun of the size of my head, and I make fun of the size of his Labanza. He's telling me the other day, hey, where'd you go? What did you eat? Where'd you go? Oh, here, we went for taco. Guess what I had? He's on the, Rob Crescioni's on a quest to find the world's greatest taco in Chicago. I found a great taco joint. I had a burrito. So whatever he eats a chaser with. He had a burrito, so he has a taco chaser. He eats a fillet. He eats like a ribeye. He's got a little fillet chaser. He goes to Portillo's. Portillo's, he gets a big beef and he gets a Polo sausage chaser. So just the ball busting that goes on. The only, whose balls we don't bust is Terry Owen. Terry is the nicest man in the history of nice men. So you don't bust balls like that with Terry.
I actually thought Terry was a terrible fit down there. I thought he was a straight-laced guy, nice guy. He just seemed out of place to me down there.
He did, yeah, always did. But he had a great business and a great deck, and he did a lot of good things for a lot of people. Just a gentle man. That whole place was full of people like Terry, and then, the crime family people, the people that would rob you for a nickel. There's a great line in the movie, Maureen O'Hara, I mentioned her earlier because my aunt, John Candy, Only the Lonely. There was a great line where she said, she was an Irish lady and talking about his Sicilian girlfriend. She'll cut your stomach open if she thinks there's a quarter in it. There was a lot of people on the floor that would cut your stomach open if they thought there was 100 in there,
I can't think of a place where you will learn more about how the world works than there. That was a cross-section of humanity right there.
Yeah.
All creatures great and small. I learned down there that money brings out the worst and best in people, and the best is exponentially smaller than the worst is bad.
Jimmy Place said it so beautifully in the podcast that he did with you. Every restaurant and every bar wanted us. We tipped well, we lived well. Some of the most generous people in the world were on the floor, not just from the experiences in our lives, the vacations and things, but somebody got sick. Somebody blew out. I can't tell you how much money I gave the guys that blew out. Or somebody was sick. We made sure their mortgages were paid. Somebody was suffering in some way. If they were a good person, they survived. If you're an asshole, people are going to be a little reticent to try to help you. But that was the greatest place in the world. It's the greatest place in the world. I'm so grateful that we caught the tail end of it. I'm so grateful that we did. It would have been nice to have caught another 10, 15 years and to be able to bring our kids down, but that's not what we got. We have to reinvent ourselves like you did, like Marty did, like I did, like so many of us did. Or you adapt or you die.
Yeah, and I got to share this with you. This is just my own personal thing with me. I was probably in the bottom 5% in earnings of all brokers. At the end of my career, it was just me, and I had 5 guys working for me. I didn't have a huge deck. I didn't do anything underhanded. I didn't bribe anybody. I didn't kick back anybody, nothing. I was straight through. I didn't have a bagman in the pit. I didn't ask people to go my way on price outs. I would write them checks. I did it the right way. Just thank God that I'm wired that way. So I never killed it. I never had $1 million a year filling orders, and I paid my guys with respect to what I was making. I paid my guys the most of any broker down there, for sure. Because I always said, if my guys can't get married, buy a house, buy a car, send their kids to school, working for me, then I'm a failure, right? So I did it the way I wanted to do it. And I do have regrets. One is that I didn't step down from the top step and try trading, because like you said, there's only a certain amount of upside as a broker. But being a trader, technically it's unlimited what you could do. And then you have the freedom to do nothing. When you're a broker and the shit's hitting the fan, you cannot just fold your arms and say, hey, like the one guy you work for, he froze in the pit. It's not an option. But then when I left the floor, I saw what happened to a lot of people down there, and you talked about reinvention. A lot of guys did really well down there, and they wound up with nothing, and some of them wound up with nothing, including their lives. Yes. They're gone now.
Too many.
So I learned to be grateful for what I have, because now I realize what I have is a lot more than these guys that were making huge money. And I want to go back to Steve Mendes, because we had a little game, him and I, because I was clerking on the step with you guys. He was the best dressed guy.
Yes. Always. Armani suits. Yeah.
I mean, super sharp. I would always give him like this was the wave, right? So he would itemize each article of clothing. He goes, shirt, $250, the tie, $200, whatever. One day he walked in with these shoes on, and they had like little bumps on them. And I knew there was some kind of skin, animal skin or whatever. And I'm pointing to the shoes. I go, like, this size. He goes, 2,500, right, for the shoes. He goes, guess what they're made out of? I go, I have no idea. Is that alligator? He whispers in my ear. He goes, ostrich. I'm like, nice. But that was our little game, was to see, what he paid for all his clothes. That guy he was sharp. Always. He knew how to talk to people. He was something. I watched him closely.
I didn't dress like that, but I always dressed nice. I want to do, I didn't just wear khakis and a golf shirt. I did, but I always tried to present myself, well. I still do. Yeah. I trade from home. I work from home, but every morning I wake up and I go through a whole morning routine. I shower, I shave, and I put on nice clothes, and I go to work. It's something Mickey Hoffman had reminded me to do when I was home. You always dress nice on the floor. Now you have to learn how to be at work at home, so dress nice. Those little things, just watching the way that Steve would hold himself, or Mulcrone, I idolized Pat Mulcrone.
Yeah, super sharp.
Yeah, very sharp dresser. He knew how to handle himself. Steve was much more fluid in the way he spoke to people, much, more gifted the way he, I think, but Pat carried himself with such pride and such decorum.
You could just tell you could walk on the floor and say, the guy's important.
Right.
You could just tell.
Yes. And I thank Pat for that. I see him, at different functions here and there every so often. I saw him a year and a half ago. And, I'm always grateful for those guys that came before us, that we're just the way that they walked. If that's all I learned. Ira Harris. Remember Ira?
Of course.
I talked to Ira today. I still talk to Ira all the time. Ira didn't have any business, talking to me. I was a clerk, but somebody told me that Ira, was important and that he was good. And so I started to talk to him and started to ask him questions, and he's still answering questions for me all these years later. Still trading. Ira hasn't needed money probably since 1980, but he's still going at it because he's on a quest of being better and improving every day, and that keeps him moving forward. So guys like Ira, Louis Borsellino, I ran into Louis at the Bellevue in the city for dinner 3 weeks ago or a month ago. And Louis doesn't know me, but we were talking, introduced myself to him, and he remembered my badge, and I said, look, I used to watch you. When I was in the Nasdaq, I would watch you in the S&P and see how you would bid. When you bid half, everybody was 60 bid. When you bid 60, everybody was 70 bid. I wanted to be like that in the Nasdaq. And I watched you and emulated you and imitated you. And eventually I became you in the Nasdaq. And that was, and you never knew it. Ross Deutsch, Scotty Cole in your podcast was talking about him without mentioning his name. Ross was maybe the best trader in the S&P ever, but not somebody that was flashy about it. He wasn't loud about it. He was great. And I played golf with him, and I got one of the best lessons in my life from him, about taking profit on a trade, learning how to take profit on a trade. I was short 30 NASDAQ, and the market was breaking. I had to stop in, so I couldn't lose money, and we went to go play golf. We're walking down a fairway, and I had I grabbed my cell phone out of my thing, it was a state-of-the-art cell phone, but compared to what we have now, it was like a brick.
Was it a Motorola brick phone?
No, it wasn't a brick, but it was a bigger phone.
Yeah, I got you.
It was a 98. I pulled the phone out and I called the pit and I bought a 10 lot in. And he said, well, I made 15 grand on it. Why'd you do that? You don't go broke taking profit. He said, who the fuck told you that? Well, this guy, he said, that guy's an order filler. If you lose money on that 30 lot, when you put it on, you're losing 30, 40,000 and you're going to make 10,000 on the trade. You will go broke taking that kind of profit. So then we had a whole long conversation.
Wow.
About how he manages his stops, how he's going to take profit on the trade. And he doesn't, I've asked him this. He doesn't remember that. He doesn't remember this conversation, but it was a seminal conversation in my life and in my career. I mean, I still talk about that. Danny, this guy in my group, was one of his clerks that became one of the big natty gas traders. And we still talk about that sort of thing, These little lessons that we pick up from the guys, along the way. Like, Steve, the way he dressed, and, Mulcrone, Pat, the way he dressed and the way that he carried it. I loved Pete Mull, loved Pete.
I love Pete.
So much fun. But I wanted to be like Pat. I don't want to be like Pete. It's not a commentary on either one of them.
Right. No, it's a style. It's to go and emulate the style. I left RJ's group with his blessing, so now I was on my own. Something changed in me, and I didn't dress like a bum ever, but Jimmy Fasano stood next to me. Jimmy always came in polished.
Yeah.
Polished.
I remember you always being well-dressed.
And so I'm like, I'm on my own now. I'm going to look the part, right? So I wore ties and nice dress clothes every day and dress shoes and stuff. And it makes you feel good too. It gives you a sense of confidence, almost like, you want to be the best. Yes. You got to look the part sometimes. And some, there's a lot of great traders that didn't dress up, but it was important to me.
It was important to me too. Yeah. It was important to me to look nice. It was important to me to present myself well. It was important to me that no matter how I was feeling inside, to walk with my head back and my shoulders back, Remember, you remember when, we can get into this later, but you remember when you walked onto the trading floor and, we were clerks and the big traders would come walking on and everybody would kind of get out of their way. It's a funny feeling to realize that you're the guy that everybody's getting out of their way from. I might be dying inside. I might be nervous as shit. I might be scared as to what's going on, or I may have gotten killed the day before getting killed that day, but you walk on the floor and people move out of their way. And, that sort of ego rub can really, 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 really kind of, propel you into all kinds of negative territory.
It could work against you is what you're saying,
For
right?
sure. But if you walk onto the floor with confidence and you know who you are and, and you see that sort of thing, that no matter how you're feeling, you can say, you know what, I do belong here. I belong among these people. They're not no better, no bigger, no smarter than me. And I'm right where I need to be.
Did you see the Norm Beister podcast?
Oh, great. I do a podcast with Ninja Trader, twice a week. Ninja started this whole thing, Ninja Trader Live, and I had Michael on. We had Michael on our show.
Beister?
Yeah. Oh my God. Norm's podcast was great.
You're reminding me about, the ego, and Norm is so humble.
Yes.
And I was telling him the story on the podcast that I remember where he held the market at a certain price and he slam dunked everybody. And he goes, a lot of times he goes, I would do that. And then, people would come up to me and go, wow, Norm, that was amazing what you did. And they didn't realize I was unwinding a massive loser. That's how modest that guy was, So you just reminded me of that when you're talking about people making path for you and how that could work against you, or you try to keep it in perspective. I belong here. We're going back to now Dixie and his son, they make a little spot for you in the Nasdaq pit, right?
Yes. And, and I struggled. I was terrified to lose money. When as traders, if you're afraid to lose money, you'll lose money, and I didn't know how to trade. I thought that my talent as a clerk would, translate directly into trading, and it didn't. So Mickey Hoffman, who became like a father to me. Mickey had a class called the UOT. It was called the University of Trading, and he eventually turned into an FCM, a small FCM. So Mickey had like mock trading. It was like mock trading. So I signed up and I took his class. I was already trading. I was already in the pit. I don't know if you'd call that trading. And, Mickey didn't teach me how to trade, but Mickey taught me how to think like a trader. And he taught me, he helped refine my mindset, but still that did not translate into profitability. So over time, I think it was like 6 months, I whittled my account down to $258. And I still have that statement. So
Wow.
it was a Friday, and my grandmother was dying. My Croatian grandmother was dying in Danville, Illinois, armpit capital of the world. So I got in my father-in-law's car. It was a Ford Explorer, and it was the middle of winter. It was January, and I drove down to Danville. How am I going to tell my wife that I'm going to have to clerk again? That I'm a failed trader. I'm a failure. We lived in a condo. We bought a condo.
Was this Nicole? Okay.
Yeah, we lived in a condo.
Did you have kids yet?
Yes, Genevieve.
Okay.
We lived in a condo in Glencoe, and so I'm far away from anybody I know. I don't know anybody in Glencoe. Holy shit, I knew nobody in Glencoe. So I didn't have any friends there. I didn't have any community there. It was just me and my little family, my wife and my baby. So what am I going to do? Smoked one cigarette after another, driving down to Danville, thinking about, I'll call Mickey, talk to Mickey about it. And I'm going to try to sign a prop deal. So I went to go on Monday. I went up into the pit.
You lost me with Mickey
Hoffman.
Okay.
So Mickey
what's a prop deal?
Mickey was going to help me find a prop deal, a backer that would take 50% of what I made.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I remember Bob Levinson.
Love Bob Levinson, one of my favorite people.
So I made an appointment to talk to Bob on Monday. I'm only 6'3", not tall enough. You had to be 6'5" or above.
I think even taller than that, but yeah.
And he's like, man, I'd like to be able to help you. I like you, but you're not tall enough. Oh, look at the Nasdaq. You don't have to be tall enough. Yeah. So I walked outside that day, and I'm thinking, all right, well, I've got choices. And Mickey Hoffman gave me 2 people to go talk to in the afternoon. And if that doesn't pan out, then I have to get a job. I got to pay my mortgage, and I have to give up my seat lease. So if that doesn't pan out, I just paid my seat lease. So I had like 3 weeks to figure it out. So I have to find a job as a clerk. I've got to go back and I got to figure it out. I don't know. Well, whatever. Stressed out, so stressed out. I walk outside and this guy, Mark Weil, who was a Highland Park kid, only son of, I think, 2 doctors, successful people. He was outside smoking. So I was smoking with him. He said, "What's wrong?" He was a Nasdaq local. He was a trader in the Nas. I told him, I said, I got to find a backer. He said, "Don't do that. This is going to be the last great pit on the floor. And you're going to sign a deal with somebody and then give away half of what you make for the next 3 years. Matt, you're going to figure this out. When you do, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to give 50% of it away, and then it's going to die." So I thought, wow, okay.
Wow, what a
great
premonition that was.
Yes.
Holy shit.
Great piece of advice. So, go beg, borrow, and steal the money if you have to. Well, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. So I walk onto the trading floor, and there's Steve up into the Nasdaq looking for me. And he's got Judd Hirschberg with him. Judd was a great yen trader who had some issues along the way and wasn't able to trade anymore, but he was working on getting that stuff put in the past. And so he wanted to learn the Nasdaq, and he needed somebody at the time to put him on a badge, put him on a yellow coat. So Judd said, "I'll teach you a way of trading that works on the floor, off the floor, anywhere in the world, anytime in the world." Those were his exact words. And he told me some things I needed to do. And then he ended it with, "And you'll pay me $1,000 a week." And I said, "Judd, I have $250 in my account, dude. I'm not, how am I going to pay you? Pay me at the end of the month. If you listen to me, you'll pay me at the end of the month and you'll pay your seat lease." So I said, okay, what do I got to lose? I've nothing in my account.
Now, was this a handshake deal, or did you pay for something up?
No, not only handshake. So he was going to teach me how to trade, and he was going to learn how the Nasdaq worked, how the Nasdaq, and he was going to become part of it too. And then when he was able to clear up some of his stuff in the past, he was going to get a seat and start trading.
That's a pretty cool arrangement, actually.
It was.
But,
I don't like saying, a God thing, right? But, because it becomes too cliche, but that was truly a God thing. Steve and Judd walking on the floor just happened to find me. Why me? Me? Okay. But I was the perfect person for Judd at the time. And he was the perfect person for me. So I had 2 trades in me. I had $200 in my account. So I had, 2 trades. That was it. And then I figured I can go, I figured Steve would let me go down debit like 1,000, before he pulled the plug. So I thought, okay, let's see what happens. So Judd is teaching me how to trade the opening range. The Nasdaq was good for 8 points out of the opening range. So when, the opening range was set, first 30 seconds, high and low, first 30 seconds, you trade the breakouts, which was, it's easier to see on the screens, than it was on the pit because you didn't, There was not always an offer at the top of the opening range for you to buy. But this particular day there was. It was a 5-lot offer to the even. Buy one of those, man. I was terrified. I double pumped, and before you knew it, the 5-lot was gone, and we were trading at 08. Yeah. So the next day, same thing. And I was nervous. Jayhawk, Ben Schwartz, the Prince of a Man, Lou Schwartz's son, was filling the order. And Judd's yelling, Pax bought one from you. He bought one from you. Did you buy one? And they're going back and forth and yelling. Somebody else goes, buy him. I sold you 1, I sold you 4.
And you hadn't even motioned to buy it.
Yeah,
he was checking the trade already for you. Right?
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
So he put the 1 lot into me, 1 bid, 2 bid. I sold the 1 lot immediately for $200 profit. Judd wanted to murder me. Called me every name in the book. Now, he's working for me ostensibly at the time, right? And calling me, just abusing me. What's wrong with you, you mother, you fucking God. Yeah, just abusing me. Next day, same thing. This time I made the trade and I kept it for 8 points. So now I've got, I've got the last 2 days, I made $1,000. I did it. I made a G-note, man. Holy shit. Maybe this works. Next day again, 1 lot. And then, and then Judd would, help me with the levels and teach me, you want to buy him here, sell it for 8 points. We go bid above there, put it back on, take him up to 20, At the end of the month, I paid him his $4,000. I paid my $3,200 a month seat lease, and I was bartending.
You paid him his $1,000.
No, it was $1,000 a week.
Oh yeah, at the end of the month. My fault. Yes, 1,008, 4,000.
$4,000 and $3,200 to him. And I was bartending 6 nights a week at a place called Patrick and James in Glencoe, downtown Glencoe. This guy Pat O'Neill owned it. He was a maniac, that Pat O'Neill. But I had no idea how to bartend. My customers were Chris Kennedy and Rocky Wirtz, and they were people coming in. This woman came in and ordered a Sea Breeze every night. A rich Jewish woman owned a shoe store in Glencoe. That Sea Breeze was different every damn time she ordered it. But she liked me, they liked me. My drawer was off every night, but Pat knew I wasn't robbing him. He just knew that I was, I get in the weeds and screwing it up. At the end of my second month with Judd, I quit my bartending job because I was able to pay my bills. And within my first 6 months, I lost everything in my account but $250. Within the next 6 months, Nicole and I were building a house in Glencoe. Within my first full year.
So in that next 6 months, what does your trading account go to? 7 figures?
I made $500,000 in the next 6 months. First 6 months, nothing. Second 6 months, I made $500,000, and then I was off to 7 figures.
And the thing is, making $500,000, but you know the system.
Yes.
So it's just a scalable thing at that juncture. Right?
Yeah. 1 lot's become 2 lots, and 2 lots become 5 lots, and 5 lots. The first 10 lot I did was Andy, my brother-in-law. Andy was offering 20. I said, buy 10. He said, I'll sell you 5. No, I bought 10. I sold you 5. You don't trade. He
was trying to look out for you, right? You
don't trade 10 lots. I do now. I bought 10, and they're immediately good. And that's $1,000 every point, 10,000 every 10 points. So now, the open interest grew. We went from, 5,000 contracts, volume grew. We went from 5,000 contracts to 10. I remember CGX. Craig stood next to me, and Craig said, "If we can get the volume up to 10,000 contracts a day, every day, oh God, we'll all be rich." And then 10,000 became 20, and now the front month euros were dying at the time. So you got guys like Bobby Bull, Nico, Jordy, his brother Jordy, Mark Heller. Bobby Bull is a great trader. Bobby came into the NASDAQ. Mark Heller, Jordy Heller did. Well-capitalized. Mark was on the upswing at the time, but, well-capitalized, well-experienced guys. And a lot of the guys from the end, Danny Gaughan came in. Stephen J. came in. Danny Gaughan was a great trader. Stephen J. Heilman, a great.
Wasn't there a guy named Tyler as well in there?
Best trader. Tyler made the best trade that I've ever witnessed in my life.
Tell me about that one.
We were a triple limit down. This is after the tech bubble burst. We were at the third limit, and there was like 1,500 offered at the limit. Whenever we were around a limit, I would lighten up my positions. I was short 15. I was probably short 50 or a little bit more on the way down. So, and I had a few 100,000 into this trade. So now we're all sitting there at the limit. Tyler goes, and there was There was 1,000 offered paper, and another 500 by all of us. And Tyler goes, buy them all. Buy them all, dude. He said, buy them all. We bounced off that. We were at the second limit. We rallied 300 or 400 points before he can even card him up. It was amazing. And everybody was.
What happened there, though? That something's got to be going on there.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that.
Okay. So, I saw that little feed to smile.
Oh, yeah. So we rallied, and now everybody's in his face. Can I have some? Can I have some? His badge was on. Can I have some? And, and he was like, no, you guys all had your chance. In fact, you were all offering no. And then he and I traded a lot together. I would help him. He would help me. He was bigger, much bigger than me. But if I bought a 30 lot, and he was bidding, I'd give him 10, and vice versa. So he looked at me, he said, you short? I said, yeah, how many? And he knew I'd tell him the truth. I said, 15. I sold you 15. We were 150 higher, literally within a heartbeat. So, he gave me a couple $100,000 trade, and that was nice. But I don't know what happened with him. It's only rumors and innuendo. But at that time, Terry Duffy had called a meeting with us. The feds were in the pit.
You didn't know who they were, though, did you?
Yeah. Nobody knew who they were, but they were there, and a couple of guys went to jail. Terry had a meeting with the whole Nasdaq pit and said, listen, if you guys are cheating, you're going to get caught, so stop. And very soon after that, this guy who made that trade, the best trade I'd ever seen, he never came back. And we were really, really busy. So the story was that he made $40 million, and they said, walk away and you'll be okay. So I don't know. There was always rumors as to what he did, and I don't like talking about rumors. But he was a great trader. He was one of the best I'd ever seen. He was ballsy. He was good. He was smart. He was talented. Whether he had a little help or not, is I don't know. I don't know. But I'll tell you, he was a great fucking trader.
Well, I'll tell you, when the euro slowed down, I went into Nasdaq. And I'd go in there for a few hours a day. And so I saw you guys trading. I saw you trading. I saw Tyler trading, Danny gone. I saw Bobby Bull, Nico. I was in there, but I was all the way in the bottom. And the pit was packed. So to even get a trade, yes, I had to jump up and buy the offer, sell the bid. And I knew Harry the Hat was in there because the market was breaking and I was bidding one lot and I went to take my hand down and Harry goes, sell you 5. And I'm like, I got to buy the 1. I go, buy 1. He goes, sell you 5. I go, buy 1. He goes, 5. I go, all right, 5. But then he looked out for me. He tried to look out for me the rest of the time I was in the pit, though.
Harry's son, Jonas, was there, Harry was Harry, and you had to love him because Harry knew how to, I'm stuck. And Harry would
the old school, take care of each other.
Right. And Harry was great at that. But when his son was in front of him, Harry would be, even on 20, sold. I'm out.
Where'd 20 go?
And then, his son would be writing. So but Harry would say, do you need him? Am I,
right.
Am I stuck? No. Okay. And then like 20 minutes later, or 5 minutes later, so I'm trying to sell the 20 at even, like 5 minutes later, he's 70 on 10 and Jonas is 70 on 10. Oh, those are the evens. Yeah, I'll sell those. It got to the point that we all knew those guys are making $1.50 a contract to fill in the Nasdaq. They've got a slew of clerks that are going to make, whatever they're making, 50, 70,000 a year or more. I don't know. How are they going to make, you're not going to make a living. We did 20, 30, $50,000, or 50,000 contracts in a day. So maybe they're filling 1,000 stuff, 2,000 stuff.
Big deal, right?
Yeah, it's nothing. So, that was the last pit where you can dual trade, and they needed to be taken care of. Otherwise we'd have no brokers.
Right.
So the whole thing kind of bred a little bit of, hinkiness. The way that pit worked, the inefficiency of it actually became very efficient. They were allowed to dual trade, and, and I would take guys out of trades constantly. I ate errors constantly. I was way overly generous in that, but, that stuff came back to me too. Guys went to jail for that in the currencies. Guys went to jail for $12.50. You change the price on a card, never in my favor. If I did that with any broker, Harry, sell him 10 at even, and he would come back and say, I need those at 10. Well, that's taking $10,000 out of my pocket. But, I need Harry to be there filling orders, and we want his customer to continue to come into the pit. So yeah, put him into me.
There's a very nuanced things that people never think are going on, but they have to.
But that's illegal. I change the quantity. I change the price. It's illegal. Now, Harry, it's illegal. Can't do it. He loses the customer. The customer goes to the S&P. Maybe he doesn't like the Nasdaq anymore. And Harry's out 10 grand. So what's he? Why does he want to continue to fill orders? We're stuck with somebody with less talent. So, we had to take care of one another. And that one good thing about the Nasdaq pit, Frankie, is that we really did look out for each other. We really, really did. I know I did to a fault. If I got a good 50 lot, I split it up with everybody. If I got a good 100 lot, I whacked it up with everybody. But, partially, I think maybe because I always thought that if I was stuck, that it would come back to me, and that happened. Partially because, just altruistic reasons. I figured that rising tide lifts all ships. And, if I can help other people out, then, good things will happen to me, and maybe that worked, maybe it didn't work, but I gave a lot away. I gave a lot of money away through the years. I don't regret any of that. Everything I did has made me the man that I am today. And, I'm pretty happy.
It's a brilliant way to look at it. Every decision we've ever made have led us to be right here, right now. Yeah. So if we're happy where we're at, then you change one little component in the past, it changes everything right in the now.
My downfall was gradual. It took a long time, and then it culminated after MF Global, but, and then trying to trade on the screen like an idiot. But it was, when I would see guys who were, less than stellar people, doing well and making a ton of money, and I'm struggling. And I think, well, what's the shit my mom or my dad would tell me? What comes around goes around. What comes around goes around. Those guys maybe they held on to their money for a longer period of time, but too many guys lost their money, and were not able to keep it, and that stuff does come back. If you live your life as a piece of shit, you're going to wind up eventually swimming in it.
Let me pause on this too, because my son Pete and I talked about this, and we use the word karma, but karma is the divine fabric of how God designs the system, right? And, my view of karma, or this equalization system that God's built, I don't believe that karma necessarily hits you like a boat wake. You go years and years of doing bad things, and then it hits you. I believe it's accompanying you the entire time. You live in higher anxiety. You don't trust anybody. You don't have any friends that you can lean on. While you're screwing people over, you're continually paying. I don't think it just hits you in the tail end with one bad thing. I think it holds your hand. That's my opinion.
Yes, it walks with you. It's like walking hand in hand with the devil, right? I mean, it walks with you, and eventually you wind up in it. That was a hard place to be. It was a great place to be. The Merc was. The trading floors, whether you're board of trade or the Merc or wherever, was unbelievably great. Like we said earlier, we met the greatest people in the worst. But too many of us have died. Too many of us have died young, and too many of us have died broke. Not because we were bad people, but because, that place takes a real toll on us, and if a lot of guys went home to their families, they didn't whoop it up. They didn't party it up. They just went home. And even those guys got sick, why? Because the stress that we lived under, the stress of, all of that, out trades. I was never afraid of losing my money. I was always afraid of out trades killing me. I'd wake up and I still have dreams of out trades, or, I've got a recurring dream I still have where I'm short, like I'm short 1,000 Nasdaq. I was never short, but I was short like this undescribable amount of Nasdaq, and the market is falling apart. Like I'm up 1 million, 2 million, 50 million, 100 million, and I'm trying to, we get to the place and I want to start taking profit, and nobody sees me. I'm buying them, and nobody sees me, and then the market reverses, and I lose everything. That's a recurring dream that I still have. That the market is breaking and nobody sees me trying to get out for a profit. What does that mean? What does that mean to me? What fear is that exposing? What fear is that bringing to light? What is that making me? What is that stirring up? And what does that dream stir up inside of me? The idea of not being seen or not being heard, not being understood. not being loved, litany of humility, Google the litany of humility. It's, you're asking for those things. You're asking to not so much love, but to love, not so much to be consoled, but to console, not so much to be, seen, but to be the seer, and that's where we find ultimate meaning. So, we were all so young, and, at least, our generation of traders and brokers we were so young, and we're so concentrated on building our business and to take care of our family in that way, because we all knew that it was going to end. I mean, we started in the 80s, and I remember everybody telling us it was going to end then. So, and by going electronic. So, if we gave into to that aspect of things, if money became our God, if building our business became the primary focus, which it did for me, if that became our primary focus, then that is the stress that ultimately kills us, that, both figuratively and literally.
And it's a biblical thing too, right?
Yes.
It's the love of money. So your trading size, I would say, what would you say would be were you the top 5 biggest traders in there? Second biggest?
It depends. There were, it depends on what era.
Okay, so you were at a time the number 1 trader in terms of size, yes?
I think so, yeah. Emo had come over. After my divorce, I had taken like a year off. And when I came back to a lot had changed. The majority of the volume was then on the screens. This is in 2003. So the majority of the volume was on the screens, and I didn't go on a headset. I didn't go on a handheld, everybody had handheld heads. I didn't put somebody on a computer. I was going to fight it, and I was going to be big enough to where I didn't need that. And all I was doing was just picking myself off or allowing myself to be picked off, and then and just trading. So Emma came over to me and said, "What are you doing here? So how much money are you losing? What do you mean? You're the biggest trader in the Nasdaq. What is wrong with you?" I am not. No, I'm not. 100 and even, 190, 180. You're trading with yourself. You're trading with yourself. These guys are all making a ton of money off your markets. You're letting them pick you off. So, I don't know. You never really know how big people are trading, especially guys like Danny or Steven who would carry huge
so
positions.
Fair enough. So then let's talk numbers. You have what is a big swing on a day? Are you taking a 7-figure swing in a day?
Yes.
What about an 8-figure swing?
I never lost that kind of money, no.
Or made?
No, yeah, close.
Okay, so now I'm going to say it in floor talk. What the fuck happened? How do you go from that to Uber driving?
Well, you got divorced, so the majority of I grew up on a South Side, I didn't care. And Nicole and I had 2 kids. So, there goes a major chunk of it, majority of it. And, I still had more than enough money that I could, if I lived right, then I can spend. But, did I live right? No. Now I'm living in my ego. And, I've got to prove my feet weren't on the ground. I've got to prove to everybody, who I am. The big like generational bond that I had to carry was, the idea of who do you think you are? I bought my first Mercedes, and who do you think you are? You could have bought 2 Lincolns for me and you, my dad would say. So I went and bought him a Cadillac. So you'd, make me feel better. I bought a lake house, and then I bought a bigger lake house in Lake Geneva. And who do you think you are with this lake house? And my mother gave me a framed plaque of the quote from Matthew: "It's easier for a camel to squeeze through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." And I thought, well, Ma, why are you making me feel guilty about this? Come on, celebrate this. Don't make me feel guilty about this. Someday you'll understand. Gave me one of those, and I did. It was about the love of money. It was about loving the house more than I loved God. It was about loving my shit more than I did. So I never took a swing after my divorce. I had 6-7-figure swings all the time. And then it just got to be more and more volume went to the screens, 04 lose money, 05 lose money. So now, things just keep leaking away, and then people want to, hey, I'm opening a bar. I'm opening a car dealership. I'm opening, this thing, that thing, and everything that I may be a good trader, but I'm a terrible businessman, and I'm a terrible investor. everything I invested in and everything that I was part of was no good. So, '08 happened, and, and all kinds of things went, by the wayside. And in '08, I was married to Jen. Jen and I married in '04 or '05. We got married in '05.
So in '04, '05,
I wasn't making money.
But you're flush. You're flush still,
yes.
Right?
And Jen and I married.
Did you know her from the floor?
Yeah, she was a clerk, and she was a young clerk, and then she was a clerk. She worked for Nick Giannopoulos, and she worked for Sally De Laurentiis, and they brought her into the Nasdaq pit. When I got divorced, I thought that my single life would be clubs and bottle service and models, and it was that for a little bit of time. And then Jen and I were out someplace, and I asked her for dinner, and she said yes. And I was dating a bunch of girls at the time, and and I wasn't anywhere near healed and ready to be married. But I knew that if I kept dating these women, I was going to ruin perhaps the greatest thing that would happen to me. And she has been, besides the birth of my kids. And no, Jen has been the best thing to happen to me. So
that's an awesome statement.
And she stood by me, and stood with me, and when she didn't understand, and I wasn't ready, I wasn't healed. I mean, I was living in my ego, and I was swinging and losing money and swinging for the fences constantly, and all I need is it started off one 7-figure day, and that'll be good, and then it became 1 6-figure day. All I need is $100,000, and I was chasing the money. I was chasing the opportunity. I was chasing what I think I missed. I was chasing, the last trade. I was chasing. When you get in the habit of chasing and that becomes your business model, you're in deep trouble. And you're, I'm not going to talk in the third person. And my ego was so big that I wasn't willing to listen to anybody that was trying to slow me down. I knew better. I did this. Look at me. How good I am.
You slow burned yourself into not being flush anymore? Is that what happened?
No, I was still flush. And then I started a prop group with a partner, and
which is what?
We were back. I backed a lot of traders too. And,
okay.
And then '08 happened, and most everybody got killed. My mother, me and Jen's son, Gabriel, was 4 years old at the time, and he was in the hospital for a month and a half with an immune deficiency. And then my mother, who had ovarian cancer, died.
Gabriel's your first child with Jen, yes?
Jen, yes.
Okay.
My mother died of ovarian cancer in June, and then my sister Elizabeth died in October, and then Jen's mother died in March. So within those 3 months or 6 months, I lost the 3 most important women to me in my life. And after now, Jen and I have Gabriel and Marguerite, and then after Jen's mom died. Elizabeth died in November, I think. I said October. She was born either in October and died in November, or the other way around. Jen's mother, Kathleen, died in March. By that time, we knew we were going to have another baby. We knew it was going to be a girl. So we named her Elizabeth, Donna, Kathleen, after Elizabeth, my mother, and Jen's mother. So during that period, it was the Great Recession happened, and I lost all kinds of money in different real estate things. And, it was just, and I wasn't there to manage it. I wasn't there to manage my traders, and just everybody was just, everything turned to shit. So I still had some dough. I was done, but I got to work, as long as I was able to kind of figure it out from there, we'd be okay. And then, I don't know, it was just like 3 or 4 years. And Stoudemire, I was done trading. I wasn't going to trade anymore. And then Stoudemire had called and trade updated version of market profile, which didn't work, but that got me back into trading. And then I got back in the trader mindset. It was like an 8-9 month thing. That was great to sit at the foot of the master. Pete Stoudemire was one of the, he invented market profile, which is still used by generations of traders all around the world as a not just a trading tool, but a trading strategy. So I got to sit at the feet of that master, the smartest man I ever met. So smart that I barely understood anything that he said. And, he's just this pure mathematician. And then I met with Jerry and started to trade in the hogs. And then, I was, I kind of had a little bit of a resurgence in the hog pit, and then MF Global failed. And then I just, whatever we had left, I just pissed away. So that was, again, chasing validation, chasing, like earlier I described I wasn't very faithful to God, but God was faithful to me. I was so far into myself at the time that I wasn't a kind and thoughtful and attentive husband, but Jen still was kind and thoughtful and attentive to me. I don't like looking at pictures of myself during that period of time. Because remember earlier we were talking about how we stand and we put our heads back and our shoulders back. I didn't look like that. I looked like I was beaten. And, and I felt beaten. I was bloated. I was not in shape. I smoked and drank too much. It was just a miserable, miserable time. Gabriel, my son Gabriel, wrote me a letter. He was in senior year in high school. He was in, the Kairos, or it's a Catholic, it's a retreat for Catholic high school kids. So he went on this, and he wrote a letter to me, which I have still in my desk drawer. So his 8th birthday was in the middle of all of this, 2012, I think. And I didn't have enough money to buy him anything. And
holy crap.
I mean, like, we were just broke. So I borrowed some money from my brothers, and I bought him, me and Jen bought him what was a precursor to an iPhone, like an iPod? Was it an iPod? iPods, right? Oh, no, iPods are AirPods are what you put in your ear. Whatever the precursor to an iPhone was with the music on it.
Yeah, those are iPods.
Okay, iPods. Yeah, we bought him an iPod. And I stood up that night, listening to Johnny Cash's song. It's 9 Inch Nails that Johnny Cash had put out, Hurt. I listened to it over and over and over again. And I was drinking cheap scotch, and I was vaping. This is when vapes were first coming out. And I just sat in the house doing that. And Gabriel's letter, I'll never forget this. So Gabriel came down so excited and so happy because he got the gift that he wanted, and balloons all over the house. And he was oblivious to what was going on. And all I did was sit there and think, maybe they'd be better off, thinking the unthinkable. And he came down and cuddled with me, and he fucking wrote that in a letter. Dad, I'll never forget, the best birthday I ever had was my 8th birthday when I got that iPod.
Wow.
I had no idea how hard things were for you. I had no clue. Jen and I don't hide. I mean, our kids are aware of the struggles that I've either put us through or that we've had. I mean, they were there for them. Whether they're Genevieve and Danny. Jen has been a great stepmom to Genevieve and Danny. She's never tried to be their mother. She just tried to be their friend and to try to be a positive influence on them. And both Jen and I have tried to, be a stable influence in their lives. Even if it wasn't financial at the time, we were stable because we were together. We were stable because we showed that life is not always easy. But if you love one another, and sometimes most of the love is going to come from one and not the other. But if you kind of, walk through that period of life, then things will get better, and karma, you live in the Holy Spirit, you move forward, life will always get better. And that's the message I have, Frank. I mean, that's, I've developed a big following on Twitter, a relatively big following on Twitter, because I tell the truth about my life. I've done podcast after podcast after podcast all over, and because, my story resonates with people, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. I was great at this, and then I wasn't, and then I was terrible at this. I was great at life, and then I wasn't, and then I was terrible at it.
Let me ask you about this, the ego thing, because this is something I struggle with. We need ego, or is it absence of ego that we really are enlightened? So if you didn't have the ego that you had, and you had the enlightenment that you have now back then, could you have made all that money? I mean, what function does the ego play in that making money? Because I don't think you can without the ego, but the ego is very hard to keep in balance.
I think that, yes. Yes. I think that I differentiate it in my mind that when I was doing very well, when I was at my best, I was self-confident. I was very confident.
That is ego, though, yes?
No, not yet. I had no fear. I wasn't afraid of going broke. I wasn't afraid of success. I wasn't afraid of, anything. And then, one of the fake gangsters on the floor, one of the guys, I don't want to mention his name, that ran big business tried to extort me, and as he did many others. And at that time, I realized a terrible lesson in my life, that not everybody has my best interest at heart. I was naive enough to think that if I did good things, people would, that it was okay. Wasn't the case. And then my marriage deteriorated quickly after that. So fear came in, and the more fear came in, the more I began to live in my appetites. And the more fear crept into my life, the less faithful I became. And that's when self-confidence became ego. That's when faith became fear. And when faith becomes fear for me, that's when I see myself and live in an ego. So I can be a self-confident man, but I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of anybody. But when I am afraid of people, or I am afraid of circumstances, or I am afraid of, losing this or not having that, then I begin to live in my appetites. And that's when self-confidence becomes the opposite of it. In my mind, becomes ego.
That's a really good frame out. And I haven't thought of it in terms of self-confidence, because there's a fine line then between self-confidence and ego.
Yes.
And I have a little proverb in my book,
Truly,
which I'm going to give you. It goes something like this. If your performance matches your ego, you're good. If your performance exceeds your ego, you're golden. But if your ego outpaces your performance, you're in trouble, right? So I think enlightenment, as I said, one of the biggest parts of enlightenment must be knowing ourselves. If you know yourself, like I know I'm a confident man, I know I'm not, I don't have fear, and you stick with that, you're good. But if you start to inflate that sense of self, like, oh, I got to be the biggest trader now. Well, you've crossed the line now.
Right.
You've went from knowing what you are to now projecting something that
you're not.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yes, that's exactly right.
This is my book, How to Be a Warrior of Light in a Dark World. It's available on Amazon. It's about mindset and many other things. It's kind of a handbook on life. I have my second book coming called The Gift of Grief. That's at the editor right now, and that will be published probably within a month or two. So thank you all for joining the Warrior Podcast. Thank you to our sponsors. We'll see you at our next show. So you did a really good job explaining, how you get to the bottom. And so now, while you're traveling to the bottom, you have Jen and you have your kids. Who are you really leaning on other than Jen? Do you have somebody in your life, a man or woman, that you could, a go-to person, or no?
No, I was just kind of drifting. It was a tough couple of years. It was very tough.
Did you have like that bottom moment where you'd be like, you hit rock bottom, or was it
that night of my son's birthday? That night was as low as I can remember getting.
Wow.
I've never thought that anybody would be better off if I was around. I wasn't suicidal. I don't think I was. Maybe I had some suicidal ideations at the time, but I just, I couldn't help but think that I'm really fucking up the world for these people, for my wife and for my kids.
What a spread from your high to that point. I mean, that's a huge spread,
yes.
Right?
Steve Freeman, Sif, his badge was Siffy in the Hogs. All of this was going on. And Sif walked over to me. I was praying the rosary in the pit. And Elfie Freeman's son. Sif walked over and he said, listen, he whispered it. He was very funny. And he whispered in my ear, you should change your name. You should change your badge from Pax to Job. I thought,
explain that.
I will. So, then, I don't know, like a year later, I'm, that night and subsequent nights after Gabriel's birthday, things began to change for me because I had, I started to read the book of Job a lot. And Job was a rich man in his land, and he was well thought of, and he had stature, and he had everything. And he was very close to God. And then everybody died, and everything was taken away from him, and he had nothing. He lost his whole estate, he lost everything. But it was in the losing everything that he found everything. He was sitting on his pile of dung. He was sitting on his, the Bible says dung. He was sitting on his pile of shit of what was formerly this grand life. And he was grateful that he was still alive, and he was grateful for God's love. So there was a period in my memory, it was that night, Gabriel's birthday night, but it was probably more of a progression where I became just so very grateful that there was a God and I wasn't it. I was so very grateful that my wife still was with me, and loved me. and that my kids looked up to me and loved me and needed me. I was so grateful that we had, like I said earlier, we didn't have the roof over our head that we wanted, but we had a roof over our head. We didn't have clothes that we wanted, but we had clothes on our back. And
you went back to basics, didn't you?
Went to dead on basics. And then it was just a matter of scaling up again, rebuilding. But I had to become grateful for all of that. I was grateful to be, I didn't feel overly sad that my mother was gone. I was grateful to have been her son and to have had her, for the first 40 years of my life. I wasn't sad that Elizabeth was gone. I was grateful to have had her for the first 40 years of my life. There was other people that I've lost. I wasn't grateful for I wasn't, sad about that. And I was grateful. I no longer resented my ex-wife. I was grateful that I've got 2 wonderful kids with her. I was grateful for everything. Mm-hmm. And once I became grateful for everything, then my faith began to grow again. And then my self-confidence began to grow, faith, hope, and love. As my faith began to grow, then I became more focused. God, please, Holy Spirit, illuminate my path forward. You put onto my heart, you put onto my soul and my heart a desire to be a father and a provider to my family. Help me do that. So I did. And eventually I opened up a small trading account. I started to trade one lots, and I sat down and I thought, okay, well, I need to make money. All I need to do is make $100. If I can make $100 trading the Nasdaq or trading the S&P, then do that consistently. And at the end of the week, I'll have $400 or $500, and then I can scale that up a little bit. And so what worked for me on the floor? What worked for me on the floor was trading. I'll teach you a way of trading that works on the floor, off the floor, anytime in the world, anywhere in the world. So I went back to basics.
Who said that to you?
Judd Hirschberg.
Yeah, that's brilliant, by the way.
So I went back to trading that way. I started to trade the breakouts from the opening range, and then I started to make a couple hundred here and a couple hundred there, and then it's just a matter of going from a 1 lot to a 2 lot to a 2 lot to a 3 lot. But I had to learn how to be successful again. I had to learn how to make money. And our lifestyle was low. We didn't need a lot of money. We didn't need much.
And where are you living at this time?
Southside, at my dad's house.
Oh yeah, that's right. You said that already.
In Oak Lawn.
And you have all your children at this time?
Genevieve and Danny were with us on the weekends, every other weekend, and a couple times during the week, but every other weekend.
No, I mean
Gabriel,
Marguerite, and Elizabeth are all born at this time. Yes. Gotcha.
Yeah. Gabriel's probably 10, 11, 12. And now I'm coaching his teams. He's playing travel baseball. He still plays baseball in college. I'm coaching his teams, and Maggie's Irish dancing. I start to make money, so Marguerite starts Irish dancing, and we start doing all of that stuff, and she gets good at it. God will provide, right? So that becomes a cliche, but if you live in faith, hope, and love, God truly does provide.
It's true.
I cannot stress that enough. Like Maggie starts getting very good at Irish dance. And, when that happens, you got to go to tournaments. You're going all over the country, and you're going to Ireland, you're going to Canada, you're going to Scotland. How in the hell am I going to pay for that? I can't afford to buy a steak. All of a sudden we're in Scotland, we're in Ireland, because I just kept moving forward, and I kept my focus on, I've said it a million times, and I'll continue to say it. It's in my Twitter bio, faith, hope, and love. I focused on growing in my faith, in my hope, and in my love. And I knew that if I can do that and build a consistent trading process, on the floor, off the floor, anywhere, anytime in the world. If I can live within the guidelines and the parameters of that I'm going to bring from the floor to the computer screens, then I can make money again. I'll never make that kind of money again. I don't need to make that kind of money again. I don't want to make that kind of money again. No, that's not true. If I make it, I'll make it. But I don't need to. Jen doesn't need it, and our kids don't.
I have to ask you this about you and Jen, and you've spoke very highly of her. Are you sometimes withholding your inner darkness and stresses from her to spare her?
I did then.
Because men do that a lot.
I did then. I don't feel like I have that anymore. I don't hide anything from her. Jen is the absolute love of my life, and I know that I would not be alive if I didn't marry her. let alone, financially, successful again. I wouldn't be alive if I didn't marry her. I know I wouldn't be.
There's another little divine thing that happens, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
That's cool.
It becomes cliche. I mean, she's my best friend. I love being with her. I love my brothers. I'm very close to my brothers, and we're planning on going out. My brother Donnie, who's a year younger than me, moved out to Arizona, so we're going to go visit. Me, Pat, and another dear friend of ours, Casey McDermott, is going to go out and see Donnie. I don't want to go see. I don't want to do that. And I'm going to see Marty. I'm going to go out and see Marty.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
I want to stay home with my wife. I want to be with Jen. I want to be with our kids. You know that Alan Jackson song. Where he's singing about it's a country song. He's singing about how great things were in the past. Jen and I.
I know that song.
I don't know why I can think of the name of it. It's a beautiful song, but it's sad to me. Our kids are going to move. Get married, move away, and have their own lives and shit. I know that. I'm not dreading that. I'm looking forward to that. Jen and I will travel all over the place. We'll do all kinds of things, but I get to wake up next to that woman every day. And I tell her that. I say that to her all the time. God, I can't believe I get to go to bed with you. I can't believe I get to wake up with you. And she'll say the same thing back to me. And, and for the longest time, I didn't think she meant it. She can't possibly fucking love me that way, but now I can accept that she does.
Yeah, that's a very cool thing. We're friends on Facebook, and I see you take a lot of family pictures, and I told you this before we started, I see a pure joy in the faces of you, everybody in those pictures.
Yeah,
so
fun together.
You guys have done very well building the web and network of love, which is awesome. Do you want to talk about where we're at now, like how you started trading?
Sure.
Right? So how did you go from starting to trade, make dough to where you're at, and where are you at now?
I needed to learn how to make money again. I needed to learn how to be consistent, and on the floor, off the floor, anywhere in the world, anytime in the world. So I adapted a lot of that old. It was an old currency trading methodology. Started off in the ags, and then they moved it into the currencies, the opening range breakout. And so I started to trade that again, and started to make money. And it's easier, it's harder. At that time, it was like 2014, 15. And Anthony Credelli, who was an S&P trader and a podcaster, one of my best friends. I love Anthony to death, and I met him when he was. I'm like 29 years old, 28 years old, and he was 20. He's maybe 21, 22. I think he's like 8 years younger than me. So he was one of the first electronic traders that I knew. And he had a company with Vince D'Agostino, and who was another S&P trader, and Mickey Oppen, called E-Mini Executioner. So I was just starting to make money again. And I went down to meet with Mickey, and then to talk to Anthony too about learning how to trade on the computer. Because I think at that point, like, it was widely considered fact that nobody was making money on the screens except for the HFTs. So I wanted to go talk to Anthony, because I'm just starting to make a little bit of dough, a couple here, a couple hundred here, maybe 800 here, nothing to write home about, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And Mickey told me, go home. Anthony's not going to be able to help you. You were one of the best traders I knew. You've got to go figure it out on your screen, and you've got to go figure it out on your own. You can do it. Just take your time doing it. So I did, and then, it was a year, like 16, there was some volatility around Trump's first election, and that was fun to trade, and it was profitable, and, and it was just a matter of scaling up. I knew that if I can make $500, then that 500 could be 5,000. It was just a matter of taking a little bit more out of the market, learning how to not necessarily trade bigger size, but learning how to add. The reason that so many of us, I think a lot of old floor traders that are listening to this might be able to, especially S&P and Nasdaq traders. A lot of the reason that we failed on the screens, or had a hard time on the screens, is because we didn't know how to size down and size up. We were either always trading too big or trading too small, and in the wrong spots at the wrong time. So instead of trading bigger, learning how to let the market size me up, let the market tell me when to go from a 1 lot to a 3 lot, or a 3 lot to a 6 lot, or something like that, right? And also vice versa, letting the market tell me when to go from a 6 lot to a 1 lot to nothing, and to be able to do that quickly, and then to divorce myself from whatever feelings and emotions that brings me. So, Gabriel, my son Gabriel is a college pitcher, and he's that we talk about always staying focused on his job, not your result. If you struck the last 3 guys out, don't be sitting there on the mound like you're Nolan Ryan. If the last 2 guys hit home runs off you, don't be sitting on the mound, feeling like you're a T-ball pitcher. Stay focused on your job. Look at, establish a routine around your pitches. Grab your crotch, scratch your ass, fix your ball cap, glove, same thing in between pitches. Get on the mound, look at what the pitch is called, and then do your job. And don't stay focused on the result. So if I can stay focused on what my job is, stay focused on the rules and the guidelines of my trading, and I'm looking for opportunity to size up or size down on every trade, then I can take more out of the market, and I can do it with adding when the market provides me those circumstances. So when we get a move like we did in the S&P last year during the tariff, that we broke from 61.66 down to 48.34. So when we get a move from 61.66 to 48.34, those are one of the huge tailing moves, the trends that we can capitalize on by taking more out of the market and by learning how to let the market size us up and size us down, as opposed to constantly being involved in the market. When we made the transition to the screens, or at least when I did, I was buying and selling every tick. I wanted to be part of every price change, and I was doing it with 50 lots and 100 lots, and not 1 lots and 2 lots. It was, if I had a $5,000, $10,000 profitable day, it wasn't good enough. I wanted it to be more. Learning how to take what the market gives me and leave the rest has been a great benefit to me, and has kept me in this business so that when I catch those moves from 61.66 to 48.34, I can capitalize on them. And if I missed it, if I would have missed it, I don't chase it. If I missed 61, if I missed most of the rally, I thought we were going to zero. But, the market turned around and started the rally, and, I don't chase. I've learned how to stay focused, like I was talking about with my son. I've learned how to stay focused on my job and not my result. So I'll go work out. I'll go sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I'll, go. Jen and I spend a lot of time together. We'll go have lunch. We'll go have dinner. We'll go do things with our kids. I'll go do something other than sitting in front of the screens, feeling emotion, and then I reset. Focus on my job, focus on my routine, focus on my morning routine, my daily routine, focus on all of those things, and then focus on my process. And then I put myself in a position to be able to capitalize the next day. There's always going to be another day. There's always going to be another trade. There's always going to be another bus, right? I heard that expression from a young trader named Tanya, this young woman. So that's it. It's a slow and steady race, Frankie. It's, you pull up to this beautiful home. You got a gorgeous house in a gorgeous neighborhood, just a beautiful home in a gorgeous neighborhood, and to hear you say that, well, I was in the 5% of earners, but you took care of the guys that worked for you, and you lived you lived your life. You and Dorothy lived the life that you were meant to live together. You lived below your means, and you lived well, and then you were able to kind of reinvent yourself because you weren't living like, so many of us did. And that's what the slow and steady wins the race. That's what every day being consistent does. All of a sudden you're sitting on a pile of wealth, not riches, wealth. There's a real difference between being rich and being wealthy. Mm-hmm. I've been richer, but I've never been wealthy.
I love all the stuff you say, because all the things you said in the tail end there, they go in my folder of internal mastery, mm-hmm. right? So our brains are complex, but they're also very simple, but they're very powerful. And we can abuse the power, and we can wire our brains to go in the wrong direction. The ego thing and balancing the ego, or the self-confidence, building that. These are all choices we make. Whatever we think about, we bring about. That is neuroscience. So with you and me, I think the gratitude is the beginning. I think the gratitude is the foundation of everything, but gratitude requires some thought, mm-hmm. right? Because a lot of people, I do this with people too, that I'm trying to help. What are 5 things you're grateful for? They can't even get through the list,
yes.
right? well, I had a terrible childhood. My parents were abusive and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I go, well, then you made it. You made it through. So you're a survivor. For every negative thing that happens to us, there's always positive counterpoints. But which direction are we looking? Are we looking into the darkness or are we looking into the light?
Yes.
And I always say there's only two knowns in our life. It's our past and this present. We don't know if we're going to live the next minute of life. We don't know what's beyond. We believe what's beyond. We know it in our hearts. So if you look at the past as a data set, right? All of these things happened, all right? We could take that data set and say, I've had a tough life. My life's been a nightmare. Or we could take the same exact set of data and say, I've had a wonderful ride. It's our choice.
It's been interesting. Right.
So,
it's a choice.
So like prayer and faith, we get really good at finding things we're grateful for. You commented on all the people who've passed. You could take that with, this is going to grieve me for the rest of my life, or I'm grateful that I had them in my life. That's your choice, which direction you look. And that makes you a better trader too, because when you have no fear, that's the big one. You said that. I have no fear. I don't think I have a fear of dying because I've already had a good ride and I'm grateful for everything. And when you don't have fear, then your mind is clear. And when your mind is clear, your field of vision expands, right? Because my contention is we're not all living and learning. In fact, most people don't live and learn. We have experiences, but we're not extracting out of those experiences the benefits. And when you're living in fear or anxiety, your field of vision narrows. You're only concerned about, what's happening to me right now. But when you're fearless, your field of vision opens and you're taking a lot more information. You're processing a lot more information. That gives you and me the ability to be at a grocery store and just say hello to somebody or even see a little distress in that person because you're paying attention. If you're internally having anxiety and I'm depressed and whatever, you don't see shit, right? You're looking at it. The information's coming at you, but nothing's getting through. So I think we can all lose ourselves. Life can bump us all off course. And the way that I stay the course is I try to stay humble in that, like all those dark times I've had, I don't tell myself I'm never going back there again. I've outsmarted that. I know what to do. I have gratitude. But even with that, even having that internal mastery, life could still bump you off course. So I always tell myself, I'm strong and I'm this and I'm that and I'm confident, but I also know that the devil's got power and I'm going to be very conscious of that and keep with my rituals, pray, faith, and make sure we don't slack off with that stuff.
For me, it's become, the older I get, and the more experience I get, the more I accept it, that my experience, the more I realize or embrace simplicity. So when I was in the seminary, Father Fabian, the priest that I mentioned that was a mystic, the Thomistic philosopher, would say that we are created by love, to love, and to be loved. That's it. We are created by love, which is another word for God, to love and to be loved. It was very difficult for me in my life to allow myself to be loved. It was hard for me to allow Nicole to love me. It was hard for me to let Jen love me. I had to rid myself of all of the shit that I carried. And then somehow, once I became grateful, then I was able to kind of accept it a little bit more, So also heaven is it's not so much a destination. It's, what Aquinas would call the beatific vision. Ironically enough, yesterday was his feast day. But the beatific vision. So we are made in the image and likeness of God, which means that we have the ability to judge things as they are. I know that you're a man, that's a wooden, bookcase. I know what things are in and of themselves. I have the ability to judge. I have the ability to know things and to differentiate between them. And that puts me in the image of God. I have the ability to judge. I have an intellect. That's a better way of saying it. I have an intellectual soul. Dogs have a sensitive soul. We have an intellectual soul. We know things are what they are. So heaven is being assumed into God's presence. We can see God, we know God, and we are experiencing that love. God is pure love, and we're experiencing that love for eternity. And we get to experience the love that we had in this life, and the love that we gave, the love that we received, is how much we're going to experience a beatific vision. Like Mother Teresa loved in a deep way, and maybe her beatific vision will be deeper than mine. But I'll never know that, because I will be experiencing that to the utmost of, to the way that my soul was stretched for love in this life. Okay, so now I think I'm getting to what I want to say. So all of those things that I've had in my life have been interesting. They've been, they've made for an interesting story. There's a lot of gangsters in there. I went to France with the boss of the Chicago Mafia. I mean, I got to do a lot of fun things, not that was fun, but interesting things. I've been at the top of my profession, and I've been at the bottom of it. All those things stretch my soul for love. So I don't fear anything. I don't fear dying. I look forward to it, because I take that last breath, and I will be surrounded by the love I gave. My kids, my wife, God willing, I die before her, and I'll be, when my soul separates from my body, then I get to experience, God's love for me in the fullness sense. St. John Vianney would say that human beings, if we experience the beatific vision in our bodies, we would explode. Only our souls can experience it. Our bodies can't. So that becomes my focus in life, and if I wind up making millions and millions and millions of dollars, well, okay, great, and I'll do the right thing with all that money. If I don't wind up making money, ever again, I'll be okay, because I know how to love and be loved now. And it's the focus of my life. And, May 24th in 2024, I almost died. I woke up with AFib. I've never had heart issues. And I didn't know what it was. My Apple Watch told me I was in AFib, so I thought, okay, whatever. I was long. I had some positions on, and I unwound them. I took a shower, because I figured, fuck it, I better get dry. And I put on nice summery clothes, because I figured, look how I was going golfing. If I'm going to the hospital, I may as well look good, So I got dressed nice. I got out of my positions. I was talking to the traders in my group, and there was a cardiac nurse that said, you got to go to the hospital now. Stop messing with it. So we did. Jen and I went to Christ Hospital, and they took me right in, put me on an EKG, no heart attack, but you're in AFib, and AFib with RVR. So my heart rate was 220 beats a minute, 160, 140 in successive beats, 98, 120, 220. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't like 220, 220, 220.
Gotcha.
So that caused, during the day, my heart, and I have a very low heart rate. My resting heart rate's 52 beats a minute, and at night we'll get to like 40. When I'm running, it'll get up. But if I'm walking, my walking heart rate's 75. So now, they cardioverted me. I was on, I had the paddles and stuff on me. So they gave me medicine. They gave me metropolol and other flectinide and other things to bring my heart rate back into rhythm, and it didn't work. So in the afternoon, they cardioverted me. They put me under, or they gave me fentanyl or something to whack me out, and then they shocked me, like in the movies. Jen said it was like in the movies.
Ablation that they did? Or?
I got that eventually.
You gotcha.
Yeah, but this was just to shock me and to shock my heart rate back in the rhythm. I woke up from that, and I looked up at the monitors, and my heart rate was rhythm, 48 beats or 52 beats a minute. So I thought, okay, cool. Jen was telling me, oh my God, it was crazy. Your whole body, it was just like in the movies. And then I got this incredible feeling of nausea. I've never been this nauseous in my life. And Frank, I can't even explain this feeling to you. I wanted to jump out of my skin. I was so anxious. It was like a panic attack times 10 million. Like I've never experienced anything like that. So at the same time, this incredible nausea, and I wanted to it felt like my skin was on fire. And every alarm is going off. My heart rate went from 40 beats to 30 beats to 20 beats to 15 beats. I was at 15 beats a minute. And it was all, it was dipping, raising a little bit to 20, dipping, So doctors come flying in, they move Jen out of the room, adrenaline, no work, more adrenaline, no work. They put me on a drip. It was like out of a scene of out of, like ER or something.
Yep.
So where's my wife? Where's Jen? Where's Jen? They brought her back in, and the doctor's working next to me, and she, I said, don't let me die. Don't let me die. She said, give me 3 minutes. And the night before, I had done this workout class called Ultra Fit at Lifetime in Oak Brook, where you sprint. It's interval. You sprint like 13 miles per hour for a minute. Then you walk. Then you lift. Sprint again. And the teacher will always say, you're sprinting for like 2 minutes, and she'll say, come on, you can do anything for 2 minutes. So I looked at her, I said, okay, fuck, I can do that. You got 3 minutes. So Jen was standing next to me, and she's just, don't close your eyes. The doctor kept saying, don't close your eyes, don't close your eyes. So I don't know, within 5 minutes or so, my heart rate got back above 20, and then above 30, that feeling of fire, my skin being on fire went away, and the nausea eventually went away too. Above 30, like that stuff went away. The doctor later told me that was our body shoots off hormones and meant to elicit the fight response in our bodies to keep us alive, and that's what I was experiencing at the time. I don't think I lost consciousness, but Jen thought I was dying. Jen thought that I was dying. So during that period, Frank, I tell that story because during that whole thing, I never once thought about my money. I never once thought about my houses, my cars, or any of that kind of shit. I thought about the love that I gave. I thought about the love I gave and the love I received. That's it. And I didn't want to leave that love. I wasn't ready to leave that yet. That's all I thought about. And I had my wife next to me, so it was okay. So I spent a couple of days in intensive care, and and then that was in May. I had an ablation in like early July, like the week, no, late June. It was right before my birthday in July, and then I had more AFib, so back in the hospital because they couldn't treat me the same way again because that all that shit. And I was in heart failure. My ejection fraction went down to 32, so. They didn't want to treat me. After the ablation, the next day, I had more AFib. So I was back in the hospital for another 2 weeks or a week. It was a long time. A little over a week, maybe not 2 weeks, but it was over a week. And I had to be on, I had an EKG twice a day, every 8 hours, I think. I got, the medicine I was on, I had to have, EKG after every dose, which I had twice a day. So eventually my heart rate came back down. Now I have an implanted heart monitor, and I'll need soon. I'll need another ablation, or I'll just go straight into a pacemaker, which is fine, But the point of that whole story, I guess there's 2 points I want to make. Is I wasn't concerned about any of that other shit. I wasn't thinking about my positions or my trading. I was thinking about I was thinking about God. I asked God to forgive me of my sins and to have mercy on me if I died. And then I fought to stay alive because my wife is next to me because I want to see my grandkids. I want to see my kids and my grandkids. And then it was that right there is the I think the seminal kind of, it's the most important way that I can look at life. And if I strip everything away and focus on love, focus on that, then everything else is secondary or it doesn't matter. And then I have no fear. And if I have no fear, I don't live in my ego. I'm a self-confident man. And trading on the screens more than any other thing that we've done, whether on the floor or off the floor. Trading on the screens demands that we are self-possessed and self-aware, self-controlled, self-confident at all times. And if you're not, you can't trade. Like the little things that I'll say, like being confident, carefree, fearless, and focused. If I am not confident, carefree, fearless, and focused every single day, I can't trade. There's always going to be another day. There's always going to be another bus. And we never know when we never know when this is going to end. How many people have we known that we've lost? And I mean traders. How many people off the floor? Not just people we love. I mean, how many people in our lives that we worked with, that we grew up with? I mean, we grew up together. We all grew up together on the floor. We became men together. And, and men, iron sharpens iron, and men sharpen men. And, we sharpened one another. But as we became more and more focused on that money, and as we became more and more focused on the world, how much of that sharpness became dull, and how many of us just devolved back into our own appetites and died alone, died broke, died with broken relationships, or how many of us are still alive with all of that anyway? It's such a sad thing, and it's got nothing to do with money.
Yep. And when you were saying iron sharpens iron and then it gets dull, and sometimes I look at it as iron sharpens iron, and then we use that sharpness to cut ourselves.
Yes.
So I heard this saying, I think it was in a movie a long time ago. It says, we come into the world with nothing and we leave the world with nothing, but in between we think we're something, And that's the thing about money, that when I said the worse is way worse than the good is good, because it changes a person's perception of themselves. I can't tell you how many young guys, and you too, they come on the floor, a lot of South Side kids that came from humble beginnings, and they're a runner, and then they're a pit clerk, and then they get badged up and they become gifted traders, and then they're fucking assholes.
Totally.
What happened to that humble kid that was starry-eyed when he walked on the floor, not knowing like his ass from a hole in the ground? Money is the ultimate corruptor. That's one of the lessons I learned on the floor.
Truly.
And I became a big shot too, even though I was in the bottom 5%, you get consumed with stuff. You want to have your stuff. You want to have the cars, the watches. I didn't even know what a Rolex was when I came on the floor. Everybody kept saying Rolex. Right. I'm like, what's the big deal? Then it became a big deal for me. And I never bought one. And, now I look at them as if I had a $40,000 watch on me, I'd worry about it. It's get stolen, get lost. I don't want stuff like that.
There are a bunch of, I'm the uncle to this whole new generation of traders, and really, really successful people. And I had dinner, this one kid, Cordelli came in from Florida, and we had dinner with a bunch of people this summer, got traders from all over the place. And this one kid, Kane, from the UK, he's from London. Love that kid. And he reminds me, he's 30 years old. He reminds me a lot of me when I was his age, So we were, what kind of watch you wearing? He asked, and I was wearing a Charles F. Burker watch, which is a nice watch. It's, right? It's nice, but and then he's having a conversation with another guy about how he's in San Tropez and he spent $50,000 on this watch, and, it was worth $100,000, and, and what kind of car do you drive? I drive a nice car, he's got his supercars. He's focused on his supercars, so the watches and the cars are important to him. And as, my whole thing to him is that, that things are going to change. This business is going to change, and the markets are going to change. What works for you now is not necessarily going to work for you in a year. People are going to get sick and people are going to die, and your insides are going to change. When all that change happens, are you going to be, and the world is going to fall apart. We're going to have another great recession, and you're not going to be able to sell a $300,000 Ferrari for, $110,000, $150,000. You're screwed. So when all that stuff happens, are you storing up enough money? Are you storing up enough riches? Are you, like same thing in death? Are you storing up enough riches in heaven to ensure that you're going to achieve the beatific vision in this life? Are you storing up enough to be able to ensure that you're going to be able to withstand all of the coming change? Instead of buying another watch, buy some gold, buy some silver. Look at, even at these levels, we had an unprecedented move the last 2 days in gold. Gold rallied $250 after Powell's press conference yesterday. $250. It's the biggest one-day move ever. And then broke $500 today. doubled, the biggest one-day move ever. I mean, gold's high was 56.26. It broke from 56.26 through the opening range at 55.10 down to a low of 51.26. Did all of that today. So instead of buying another fucking supercar, buy gold, buy silver, spread the money around with people you love, and buy food, buy ammo, buy things that are going to last and protect you and your family.
I'm looking up gold right now because I've been watching it too.
I think we closed around 53.50. I don't know.
Oh, did you watch until the close?
No, but I checked on it.
It says 53.97.
Yeah. Okay. So rally back up to like 54 even. And today I had 2 DMs that I answer all of the DMs that I get. And I put out on Twitter, I put out a lot of, information, and I do those podcasts with Ninja Trader. I do those shows with Ninja Trader on Sunday nights, and then on Fridays I do one tomorrow, 7:30.
Tell everybody about PAX Trading, what your platform is and what your mission is with that.
My mission is to, I guess that's what I was trying to do. So my mission is to help people become consistently profitable, by trading my trading method, or my trading process, and to keep that money and to grow that money by becoming better people. Anybody can make money trading futures, but it's keeping it and growing it. That's
a whole different approach angle than convention.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah, it is. So that's my message to people. Don't fall into the mistakes that I've fallen into. And because the world is going to change, your life is going to change. You will change on the inside.
I love how you said that too. People are going to die. You're going to change on the inside. Mm-hmm. So with the PAX Trading, people can get various degrees of coaching with you. They can see you trade during the day, mm-hmm. right? And this is all on X, correct?
Mm-hmm. No. And I have a Discord room, so they can trade with me in Discord. And if I'm not trading, I'm trading less and less and less nowadays too. So, but you can trade with my group. You can trade with some guys that are great traders that are in my group, and you trade with me. I traded all day today. I don't think I traded yesterday or Monday. But, I'm at the point now where I don't have to be part of the market all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting, there's the way that prop, there's still old, like, K1 based props, like prop firms, like we knew on the floor, they're just electronic. But in the last 6 or 7 years, these companies pass themselves off as prop called funding companies. And what they do is they really kind of hurt people. You pay me $250, and I'm going to let you trade on the simulator, and with the carrot and stick. So you pay me $250 to be able to trade, sim, but a live account of $100,000. So you can trade, 8 lots. But if you lose money, you reset and pay me another $250. If you break my rules, you reset and pay another $250. If you, and the rules are always too stringent. Like you can't.
Sounds like a video game.
Oh, yeah. It's a real scumbag way of making money, and they're making tons of them. These firms are making tons of them. Like the rules are meant to break you, not to help you. If you sell the Nasdaq and and the Nasdaq is breaking 500 points. You can't make more than 2,500. So you got to get out of the trade. If you make more than 2,500, you got to pay me another $250. Oh yeah, it's awful. So
that's like Uncle Sam. They tax you on everything.
Right. It's really bad.
You make money, they tax you. You lose money, they don't let you write it off, right?
I got a DM from a guy today who's suicidal. He lives in Germany and he's going to kill himself. Yeah, I don't, I try to get him on, you can talk on, you can talk on Twitter. In DMs, like a phone call. So I called him, he doesn't answer. I call him again, doesn't answer. So I'm texting him helplines and, German helplines and, all kinds of things. Gave him my number. God, I hope he makes it. I did what I could, and I'm not responsible but part of it, he lost his wife and daughter because he's $800,000 in debt to these firms. He has lost $800,000 in these resets. So one of the things that I'm trying to do at this point in my life is, I'm trying to bring like old school prop, like we're used to, into the retail area, so that these people will have, you can only trade my process. So, you make money doing it, then you're going to trade live money and you're going to be great and we'll split it, and that, and you'll have a buyout and then it'll be it. Just like, I did with Jerry, or just like, I would have with other people before the Nasdaq, and that seems like it's going to be the next phase of my career. Like Judd taught me a way of trading that works on the floor, off the floor, anytime, anywhere in the world.
That's awesome.
And I'll pass that forward.
So,
and make money doing it.
So you live your life trying to be the best you can be, using your faith and, your knowledge of the Bible and Jesus to guide you. This is what I say constitutes your legacy, right? You may not be living to leave a legacy. I am, and I define the legacy. So I'm glad you said I am. So if you died today, did you check every box?
Yes.
That's awesome.
I would die with no regrets, and I would die with no wants, no needs. I've left my kids and my grandkids, and in successive, however long these things are going to last. From the shows that I do for Ninja Trader on Sunday and Fridays, multiple podcasts, including yours. Yours will stand out because it's more of a personal one than I have. But I share my faith. I share my hope and love. I share my, as Marty would say, or Moon would say, I share my experience, faith, and hope with everybody that I meet. And because of that, I feel like I've left my kids a great legacy, and my grandkids, they'll know me. They'll know me.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've already answered the last question I like to ask people, but I'm going to ask it anyway. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how happy and fulfilled are you?
Oh, it's a 10.
That's awesome. Most people can't answer that as a 10. That's awesome. Well, my brother, as a fellow human being, I will say I'm damn proud of you for all the stuff you've been through. All of our stories are interesting, but in particular, when you get through with faith, because that's what you shine on everybody else. That is the only way,
yes.
So you set the example. Anybody else you want to mention? You got your kids. I do want to. So you have Genevieve, 28. Danny's 26. Gabrielle is 20. Marguerite is 19. And Elizabeth is 16. They're all doing good?
They're all doing great, yeah. Genevieve went to Marquette. She finished at her graduate work at University of Iowa. She's a recruiter for a engineering firm in Chicago called Sargent Lundy. I talk to her almost every day. She's got her little apartment in the city, and she does her little, she hangs out with her friends and going to dinner and drinks and yoga and workouts, and she's got a boyfriend. And Danny went out to Breckenridge, Colorado for a season. That was 6.5, almost 7 years ago. And he's I'm surprised that he's, my son, let alone in my family. He's an outdoors man. He camps in the mountains in a tent in the winter. My idea of camping is a Holiday Inn Express, dude.
There's no tents in Beverly.
No, hell no. I'll eat a steak, but not on a cast iron grill on a fire. I'll go to Gibson's and have it. But no, Danny has found his tribe up in the mountains, and he's a graceful snowboarder. He's a professional, not a professional, but he's of that ilk. And he's working on becoming a firefighter in Denver.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
I love
he's
it.
Just a phenomenal and just smart. He's so smart and witty. Funny as can be.
You got a little bit of that from you, that's for sure.
I think so. And he looks a lot like me. And then Gabriel's 20 years old, and Gabriel is tenacious, and he finds a way. For anything in life, Gabriel will find a way. And Gabriel's so good looking, and he's got his girlfriend who, they're very in love, and it's fun to watch.
And technically in the birth order and in that crew, he's your oldest, right?
With Jen, yes.
Yeah.
Our kids aren't like that. Genevieve and Danny, even though they have different moms, they don't see each other as half siblings. They really,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm very blessed that way. And Jen and I really cultivated that in our families, and our kids, Genevieve and Danny have followed that lead. And so are the other kids. I mean, they're all aware that Jen is not Genevieve and Danny's mother, but Gabriel's just such a great kid. He really is. Like he just finds a way, he's working. Gabriel is a very decent trader too. And that's what he wants to do. And I welcome it. A lot of guys, will say, you want your kids to trade? I do. Yes, I do.
Awesome.
I do want them to trade. And Gabriel will be very good. Marguerite is a freshman at Miami of Ohio, and she's the most independent or interdependent. She's the most, my daughters are out, actually Genevieve's like that too, but the most interdependent kid. She taught herself how to write her name. She taught herself how to tie her shoes. Come on, Marguerite, I'll teach you how to ride a bike. Come on, we'll go. No, I'll do it, Dad. She taught herself how to ride
interesting.
a bike. Yeah, it was, and she is interesting, and she's beautiful. She's smart, talented, and loving and kind. She loves being around us. Like she went back to school last week, and she was so sad. She didn't want to leave. Just, stay forward looking, honey. Just think about all of the great things. Oh, today she gets her bid for her sorority. She gets her sorority.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So, stay focused on all of that stuff. You'll be all right. She's had the best week. And then Elizabeth is the busiest 16-year-old kid. She's a cheerleader at Mount Carmel. She was involved in competitive dance until just this year. And she's just, like kids her age, they're exploring themselves, right? So drinking, there's a lot, drinking culture on the South Side is pretty good. My parents aren't drinkers. I don't like drinking. You don't go to a party and tell kids that. You'll be the dork. Just go there and, hold the high noon, So she's just so fun. And, and it's interesting to see Genevieve and Elizabeth have 12 years between them. And it's interesting, they're my bookends. It's interesting to see how closely they relate to each other, even though they're so far apart. Different moms, different generations, but because they're my bookends, they really, they were the only ones. Genevieve was the only one to live with me on her own. And Elizabeth now lives with Jen and I without any other brothers and sisters. So it's very fun to watch them kind of
that is a real interesting dynamic.
And become close, yeah.
And when you were talking about Marguerite, she is the middle child of your second brood.
Yes.
And my middle child, Peter, is just like her. I don't want any help. I'm going to do it all on my own. Don't worry. I got it covered. It's super interesting. There is something to the birth order. There's a science to it. So
for sure.
And then, praise God that Jen still likes you, right? So
I think she loves me. Oh God. She's, Jen's beautiful. Do you remember her from the floor?
I do. And I remember, I didn't know her very well, but I just remember her being one of those people. She's too nice to be down here. Yes. That's how I always looked at her.
She really is. She's tough. Nobody gets away with anything around her, I don't try to get it, but like the kids don't. Last night we're taking dancing lessons.
What kind of dancing?
It's ridiculous. The ballroom dancing. So we're learning the rumba. That. I feel like an idiot.
Well, first of all, we have to say you're 6'3" and Jen is what?
Oh, yeah,
5 feet tall?
5'2", yeah.
5'2", yeah. So right there, you
got
the
whole thing. It's ridiculous. So we're driving out to Oak Brook for this lesson, and and I'm crabby. I don't want to do this. I'm I don't know. We're listening to a podcast, we're listening to music, and Jen's like, "Come on, honey, you're gonna have a good time." No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. We did. We had a blast, and it just made fun of each other, and we're learning how to turn in the rumba. Come on, you're fucking up the turn. No, I'm not. You are. You're trying to lead. And the guy's like, holy shit, look how you guys are so much fun to watch, because we were just having so much fun together. And then went to Capitol Grill for dinner and, had a drink together and just,
I love Capitol Grill, by the way.
I do
it's
too.
One of my favorite. So let's talk about Jen real quick. When you work on the trading floor and you survive down there, you have to become impervious to getting your balls busted.
Oh, yeah.
She must be a PhD at that to survive you, right?
She's got a thick skin.
But does she give it back as well?
Right back at it.
Love it.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. That's kind of what I was trying to say about last night, our dancing. You're trying to lead. Well, you got to start leading. I am leading, and this kid, the teacher is like, I'm just going to stay out, laughing at us. But we had so much fun.
That's awesome. I either saw a short video by a psychologist, but it basically said when you have the type of friends that you can get together and bust each other's balls, those are the truest, longest lasting friendships.
Truly. Think about that, Frankie. I mean, I'm so privileged to be able to see Rob Crescione and Marty Walsh, and as I know you're going to spend time
PhD
with
ball
Marty.
busters too.
PhDs, and just great guys. And the fact that we are still friends after all these years, Terry, that we're still friends after all these years it's just so grateful. I'm so gratified. My brothers always had these friends from the neighborhood that they grew up with, and I did too. But I was busy at the Merc, so my friends were Merc guys, and they still are. And the interesting thing is that we're all, we're on a path of being and becoming. So we're all working on being better and doing better, and that's fun. That keeps our friendships fresh, and that keeps our relationships fresh, and that keeps life, grounded.
And all of us having been down into the cesspool of humanity, of the trading floor, and seeing the rise and fall of so many people and the extremes of human behavior, from the fun stuff to the bad stuff. There's a kinship we have with each other that civilians can't quite understand, and they have guys that you're close with that are good people.
Yes.
And I'm close with Marty too. It's sustaining. It helps pull you through, because we've been through on the same battlefield.
And we show up for each other.
That's right. Marty, when I had Dorothy's memorial service, he flew in from Arizona. Talk about meaningful. So there was never even a question. He didn't ask me, should I come? He's like, oh, I'm coming in.
My father-in-law died. Jimmy Place is at the wake. Jen's dad.
That's how I started dialogue with Jimmy Place. He came to Dorothy's memorial service. He was at the church before me. I never spoke a word to Jimmy Place in my life. I saw him on the floor.
Prince.
I don't even think I said good morning to him. He was flying at a different altitude than me. I was even afraid to talk to him.
Yes.
And there he is standing at the memorial service in the lobby before the thing started. I was beside myself. I couldn't believe it.
Prince. He's a prince.
Absolutely unbelievable. So, well, my brother, we covered a lot of ground. What an honor. I wanted you to create a legacy piece for yourself, for your family. We covered childhood through the darkest times to now. And we both had a hell of a ride, haven't we?
Yes. I'm grateful for every step of it, Frankie. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother. All right. That's Matt Kenah, everybody, in the Raw. Thank you for joining us today on the Warrior Podcast. And remember, there's a warrior inside us all. We'll see you at our next one. Thanks you again, sir.